Guy is a miserable orphan with zero future. Before getting kidnapped, he finds a cursed sword soaked in demonic blood. One touch, and boom, he's a filthy, overpowered demon lord with insane power and a bad at his side. A group of workers hired by a client is searching for a sword in an ancient cave. One worker asks the boss to confirm that they are in the right place, as all they have found so far are stones. He wonders if the sword is worth the trouble. The boss explains that the demon sword, Recap-kun, is not just any sword, it is said to hold great power. Meanwhile, two helicopters are heading to the cave. Administrator Miora is eager to see the Recap-kun and states that it is at the top of the hierarchy of legendary weapons, forged using the blood of 1,000 demons. Seiya warns Miora to be careful and not to become the 1001st demon. Back in the cave, the boss continues, saying that the Recap-kun is likely around 2,000 years old, originating from the Roman era. He narrates a story about how long barbarians attacked a small village outside the Roman Empire without warning, destroying many lives. The village priest prayed to the gods for help, but the gods were silent. In desperation, they turned to a demon instead. They sacrificed a sheep and prayed fervently to the demon, who responded by sending a lone knight. The knight wielded the Recap-kun. The evil aura from the sword attacked the barbarians, and the battle ended in an instant. The villagers then offered their prayers of thanks to the knight, but the priests had forgotten they had prayed to a demon, not a god. The knight had not come to save the village, but to destroy all life, and so he did. The worker finds the story disturbing and asks if they are safe digging up something so dangerous. The boss reassures him that it is merely a legend. Another worker calls the boss to check out something they found. It's a grave. As they walk through it, they come across a cracked wall with lights shining through the cracks. When they break down the wall, they see a knight's armor with the Recap-kun. The boss now realizes that the legends are true. Just then, the helicopters arrive, and Miora heads in with his team. The boss asks who they are, and Miora responds that they're with the Shoshidai and are in charge of various legendary weapons. He asks for the Recap-kun. The boss refuses and tells his workers to attack. They begin shooting while he goes for the sword. Another worker informs the boss that they've been outnumbered. All his workers are down, and the squad goes in to find the boss. But from the shadows, the boss emerges with the Recap-kun, covered in blood. Miora finds it beautiful. The dark aura of the Recap-kun swallows him up, and Miora asks Seiya to retrieve the sword. Seiya attacks and eliminates the boss, taking the sword before they head back. Miora once again remarks that the sword is beautiful, but Seiya insists it looks horrifying to him. Miora claims he can see the faces of its victims on the blade, which is what makes it beautiful. Seiya then leaves to sleep while Miora remains, still staring at the sword. A squad attacks a ship in an attempt to seize the flamberge. They open fire on the wielder, who angrily uses the blade to burn them, eventually setting the ship ablaze. Meanwhile, at Shoshidai, the Recap-kun calls to Miora, who rushes to it. Miora adores the sword and unlocks it. As he carries it, the sword possesses him, causing him to turn against the team that came to help. They shoot at him and only end up bruising his face and breaking his glasses. Once they finally run out of bullets, Miora kills all of them. Wakaba is seen reading a magazine. Her husband, Takashi, returns from work and asks about her health. He suggests they find out the baby's gender, but Wakaba reminds him they decided to keep it a surprise until the baby is born. Takashi says it makes it tough to get a present as he doesn't know what gender to buy for and always buys for both. At another house, a man goes to a sword in the room, stating that the sword, Shiru, is crying out for blood. They prepare to perform a ritual to cleanse the sword of its evil aura. During the ritual, the men cut their palms and pour their blood onto Shiru. However, when it is one man's turn, his blood completes the ritual, but he fails to stop in time. His blood touches the blade, and everyone is terrified. The man picks up Shiru and licks the blade. The sword's evil energy takes over him, causing him to seek more blood. Suddenly, the man attacks and kills everyone in the room, but finds himself still craving more. A dark aura envelops the sword as he roars, sounding like a beast. Later, Wakaba and Takashi return from grocery shopping. Suddenly, Takashi stops, and when Wakaba turns around, she realizes he has been killed. She runs back to her husband crying, but the man just walks past them, still seeking more blood. Wakaba is now angry. People on the streets are terrified at the sight of the man. He suddenly attacks a woman, causing everyone to run away. The man then comes back to his senses. Realizing what he's done, he throws Shiru away, but is suddenly stabbed in the back by Wakaba with the same sword. She finishes him off, and Shiru possesses her. Now, she also is bloodlust. Sayaka walks quietly to school while Guy is at home watching a sword being forged. Sayaka isn't paying attention and keeps staring out the window. When classes end, her friends ask her to eat lunch outside with them since the weather is nice. While eating, they invite her to hang out after school, but Sayaka refuses, claiming she's busy. One friend points out that Sayaka never wants to hang out, and she apologizes. They then ask about a boy who is interested in Sayaka and whether she has turned him down. Sayaka denies this, but mentions that she doesn't have time to spend with him. The discussion about Sayaka's love interest continues throughout lunch. After school, Sayaka takes the bus home and is greeted by Tatsumi, who was sent to run an errand. They walk home together and see Guy on the way. Sayaka calls out to him, but he ignores her. She decides to go after him, making Tatsumi feel jealous. At the Ogata house, Guy is busy working, and Sayaka thanks him for saving her and admits that she doesn't really know how to handle Tatsumi. Sayaka invites Guy to hang out with her, but he says he's busy. Sayaka tells him he doesn't know how to have fun, explaining that if he's too serious, he won't be able to make a good sword. Guy becomes upset and asks Sayaka to leave. She apologizes and playfully takes his knife, saying she'll only return it once he agrees to hang out with her. Guy grabs her hand, causing her to drop the sword. Tatsumi comes to Sayaka's rescue and throws Guy onto the floor, but Sayaka pleads on Guy's behalf, claiming it's her fault. Tatsumi blames Guy anyway, which Guy accepts, apologizing in turn. Tatsumi tells Guy that he doesn't look sincere, and Guy then glares up at Tatsumi, intimidating him. Master Amen interrupts them and asks what's going on. Tatsumi tries to explain, but Sayaka intervenes, saying they are just playing around. Amen informs them that the Shiryu has begun to cry once more, and they will perform the calming ritual the next day. He instructs Sayaka to purify herself for her role as a priestess, and then asks Zayai to follow him. Amen takes Guy to the grave of his mother in the woods and offers prayers, but Guy refuses to pray. Amen explains that he buried Guy's mother there so she could look over him with a clear view of the estate. He asks about Guy's future plans since he has completed his required education. Guy replies that he has no plans other than to become a swordsman. Amen had assumed he would say that and advises him to work harder to make his mother proud, but Guy mutters that she won't be proud. That night, Guy enters the Shiryu room and Tatsumi sees him. Guy murmurs to himself that Shiryu is his only mother. Meanwhile, an auction is taking place, and Miki is eating instead of participating. Hyoka scolds him through his earbud, urging him to focus since he's not there to eat. Miki tells her to relax, explaining he hasn't had a meal like that in a long time. While he enjoys himself, Marcus approaches and compliments his fragrance. They start to bond, and Marcus notes that Miki isn't participating in the auction. Miki reveals that he's there for something else, and Marcus says he is too. Miki accidentally agrees to bid on a statue, and Kyoka to remind him that the money would come from his pocket money. The auction is concluded, and the items for the next auction are in another room, and the attendees are told to have a look at them at their convenience. They move to the next room, and Miki spots the Azoth, the true reason he's there. With his eyes, Kyoka sees the sword, and Miki sees a demon laughing within it. Marcus, also interested in the sword, engages Miki in a conversation about the tale of Paracelsus and the devil. Marcus shares that in the 16th century, Paracelsus made a contract with the devil to master the art's alchemy in exchange for his soul. With the devil's knowledge, he completed the Philosopher's Stone but broke the contract. Miki agrees that would surely anger the devil. However, Marcus tells him that Paracelsus was victorious. He sealed the devil within the Philosopher's Stone, which he placed on a sword, the Azoth sword. In a car with his butler, Marcus confirms that the Azoth is real this time, claiming he has heard the devil's laughter. While Guy and Sayaka are doing chores, Tatsumi reports to Eamon that Guy was with the Shiryu and kept staring at it throughout the night, but Eamon knows this. Tatsumi reminds him that no one is supposed to touch or even look at the Shiryu. Amon explains that it's because it is dangerous for those who do, but he adds that if it does no harm, it is of no concern. Tatsumi then asks if Guy is special, and Amon tells him that when he found Guy, he was tightly holding the Shiryu as if it was keeping him alive. Amon says he believes that the Shiryu seeks Guy too, and that is why they need Guy's blood to calm it. Amon also points out that Guy's eyes are always fixed on the sword, indicating that he lives with death. He suggests that Guy may have reached a state he longs for but cannot achieve. It is now time for the calming ritual, and everyone except Amon puts on blindfolds. Guy approaches Amon, who calls for Sayaka to enter. Sayaka begins making incantations while looking directly at the Shiryu. She goes straight to Guy, who cuts his palm and pours his blood onto the Shiryu. However, Tatsumi, who doesn't want Guy to be the chosen one, removes his blindfold. The sword reacts immediately, possessing Sayaka, who then attempts to strike Tatsumi. Guy jumps in to save Tatsumi, but in the process, Sayaka ends up cutting Guy's hand. Guy is still in severe pain after being treated. Eamon explains to Sayaka that Guy is feeling the pain of his lost arm, a suffering that cannot be cured. Sayaka still has no idea of what happened during the ritual, and Eamon tells her it was just an accident and not her concern. When Eamon leaves, Sayaka tries to comfort Guy, but he pushes her away and heads to his mother's grave. In anger, Guy stabs the grave, shouting that he'll kill her. Sayaka and Eamon find him, and Guy suddenly passes out. Eamon tells the Shiryu that it is Guy's protector, so it should merge with him and defend him. Eamon then begins refining the blade. Meanwhile, at the auction house, the Azoth sword is being auctioned. Marcus and Mickey place bids, with Mickey raising the bid until Marcus can't keep up. The winning bid goes to Mickey, and the sword is sold to him. He then informs Kyoka that he is heading back to Shoshidai, having completed his mission. On his way back, Mickey encounters Marcus in his path. Mickey knows Marcus wants the Azoth and warns him that it is dangerous and not meant for amateurs. Marcus knows this and says that is the reason he needs it. He asks Mickey to sell it to him for a fair price, or his men will take it by force. Mickey informs him that this will not work, regardless of how strong they are. Meanwhile, Miora watches from the shadows. Mikey effortlessly defeats Marcus's men, surprising him. Just as he begins to leave, Miora blocks his path. Kyoka recognizes Miora, and so does Miki. Miora tells Miki that he called for him, and he answered. He pulls out the Zusoltgawen, and Kyoka warns Miki to leave immediately, explaining that he cannot defeat the Zusoltgawen alone. Miki refuses and summons his sword, the Falgon. Suddenly, Guy awakens and finds out that his arm is like an armor. The Zoltgawen takes over Miora and he transforms into Busoma. They begin to fight, but the Zoltgawen is stronger. Kyoka urges Miora to run, insisting that he can't fight it alone. Miki then calls for lightning with his sword and it strikes the ground, creating a thick fog. When the Zoltgawen cuts through the fog, he realizes that Miki has disappeared. Miki drives back to Shoshidai, feeling relieved and says he was almost done for. He suddenly realizes that the Azoth sword is missing. Gay stares at his new hand and hears voices urging him to kill. He realizes it's the Shiryu. Gay meets with Eamon and the other apprentices. He asks why Eamon would use the Shiryu on someone like him. Eamon explains that the Shiryu is his guardian sword and now serves as his right arm to protect him. He adds that if Guy feels remorse, he should become a swordsmith and forge a greater sword than the Shiryu. Guy then agrees and bows while Tatsumi watches him quietly. She expresses her happiness that he is doing better, but Guy says that Eamon is a fool for destroying the Shiryu. Sayaka tells Guy that Eamon did it for his sake, but Guy does not feel worthy of such sacrifice. In frustration, he destroys the Shiryu scabbard and burns it. Meanwhile, Tatsumi confronts Eamon, asking why he would waste the Shiryu on Guy. Amon responds that a sword is merely a tool and that people are more important than tools. Tatsumi reminds him that the Shiryu is not just a tool. Eamon insists that the Shiryu and Guy are bound by fate. He believes the Shiryu wanted to become Guy's arm and says he desires to see how Guy lives now that the Shiryu is part of him. Eamon adds that if Guy lives his life as a sword, he may become his masterpiece. Marcus is asleep with the Azoth beside him. The demon on it comes out and Marcus suddenly wakes. He realizes that the entire fight between Zoltgawen and Falgon was not a dream. Knowing the teachings of ancient magic, he admits to the fact that powers exist beyond human imagination. He craves the power to be able to have his revenge. His sister walks in and invites him for brunch. The table is set and Marcus sits with his family. They're all chatty, but he doesn't respond to any of them. Frustrated, he yells at them to leave and says he will wire money to their account. His father asks if they have done anything wrong and they suggest replacing the family with new people. But Marcus says that he's sick of having a fake family and yells at them to leave. Marcus then decides to perform a ritual for the Azoth sword, but it does respond. The doorbell rings, interrupting him. Kyoka and Miki go through Marcus's information and discover that he was involved in a car accident 2 years ago, which resulted in the loss of his parents and younger sister. As a result, he is now paralyzed from the waist down, and he is not expected to recover. Miki comments that it seems Marcus knew about the Azoth sword and hopes it's not too late for Marcus. Meanwhile, Marcus is with a visitor. He expresses surprise at her visit, and Erica tells him that she tried to contact him but received no response. Marcus mentions that he heard from Tanabe about their marriage and congratulates her. Erica asks if he genuinely feels that way, and Marcus agrees, saying he couldn't be happier for his ex-girlfriend and best friend. He requests an invitation to the wedding, however. Erica explains that Tanabe wants a private ceremony. As Erica leaves, Marcus watches her from the window and sees Tanabe waiting for her. Memories of their good times together flood back to him when she was his girlfriend. Marcus then declares that they will pay for their betrayal, and as he does, the sword reacts, causing the demon within it to appear. The demon tells Marcus that it can sense the flames of his hatred and asks to grant his wish while moving toward him. Meanwhile, Sayaka is returning home from school and Tatsumi is once again waiting for her. He tells her it's going to rain, so he came to escort her. Sayaka declines his offer, but Tatsumi decides to walk her home, trying to engage her in conversation. He reveals that he turned down the opportunity to return home to find a wife and promises to stay with Sayaka forever. Suddenly, Tatsumi grabs Sayaka and confesses his love. She threatens to tell her father, Amon, but Tatsumi responds that Amon betrayed him and loves Guy more. He pushes her against a tree and says that he will take her instead. Just then, Guy interrupts and Tatsumi blames him before attacking him. Guy uses his Shiryu hand to stop him. Guy suddenly feels an urge to kill Tatsumi, but Sayaka calls out to him, stopping him. He decides to break his hand to silence the voices in his head, but cannot, so instead, he hits his head against the wall. Sayaka runs in to stop him, and the voices immediately disappear when she hugs him. While Tanabe and Erika are getting married, Marcus interrupts them. They're both surprised to see him. He stands up from his chair, surprising them even more. At the Ogata house, Kiyomi visits to return a blade to Master Amon, but he is not home. She asks one of the apprentices to give it to him. Kiyomi explains that it's a Tombokiri spear and that she was asked to sharpen it. She further explains that it's a legendary weapon, sharp enough that a dragonfly landing on the blade was sliced in half. However, Tatsumi is eavesdropping on their conversation. Back at the wedding, Marcus suddenly attacks Tanabe and Erika, pulling out the Azoth sword, but is confronted by Mickey. Marcus tells him to get out of the way, but Mickey tells everyone else to run. A dark aura radiates from the Azoth, making it difficult for Mickey to see as Marcus escapes. Mickey quickly uses his ball gun to disperse the darkness. Tanabe and Erika continue to flee, but Erika suddenly trips and falls. Marcus catches up to her and, descending upon her, attempts to attack. However, he suddenly has flashbacks and stops. Overcome with emotion, he begins to cry, and Mickey comforts him, encouraging him to follow him to a place where he belongs. Meanwhile, Tatsumi sneaks in and takes the Tombokiri spear. Marcus, still in tears, cannot believe he tried to kill Erika and admits that he still loves her. Mickey reassures him it wasn't his fault, explaining that he is no longer himself because he was chosen by the Azoth sword. Mickey explains that over time, a weapon absorbs human blood and comes to life. He continues that a person's sorrow and despair strengthens that life, and when the weapon awakens, it resides in individuals with a desire to kill, strengthening that urge. Mickey tells Marcus that they're heading to Shoshidai, a place that cares for people like them, where they will be put to sleep. He says that it's a good thing Marcus didn't kill her, adding that if his killing rage had consumed him, he could have become a Basoma. Meanwhile, Guy is hard at work when he is suddenly attacked. He recognizes it's Tatsumi, but he looks different now. He is transformed into a Basoma, meaning he has become the weapon itself, completely overtaken by the urge to kill. Sayaka rushes to Guy's rescue, but Tatsumi roars at her, causing her to pass out. Tatsumi tells Guy that he has surpassed him. Mickey continues, explaining that someday they will also become Busoma, even if they seem fine at the moment. He says that the fate of anyone who merges with a weapon is sealed. It's just a matter of time, which is why they need to sleep. Marcus then asks Mickey to be his friend, to which Mickey responds with a laugh, and Mickey laughs, saying they were already friends ever since Marcus stole the Azoth sword. Tatsumi strikes Guy, pushing him back. Guy hears the voices telling him to kill. He finally succumbs to it, and his Shiryu arm transforms, and they begin fighting. Meanwhile, Amon feels something is wrong and goes out to check. He comes across Sayaka still passed out and tries to wake her, wondering what happened. Tatsumi and Guy are still at it in the woods, and Guy finally pierces Tatsumi's stomach as he runs past him. Back at the Shoshidai, Marcus meets the leaders of the organization. Kyoka reassures him that he will be under their protection from now on. They all welcome him, and Marcus asks about Miki's whereabouts. Kyoka tells him that he will see Miki soon. Meanwhile, Mickey is undergoing a scan, and everything appears normal. He sneakily waves at Mina. The Shoshidai officials inform Marcus not to worry, promising to take full responsibility for his well-being. Their duty is to research the methods weapons use to possess people, and if they are successful, they may be able to change Marcus from a chrysalis back to a normal person. Then, he wouldn't have to worry about becoming a Basoma. Marcus is asked if he remembers what happened when the Azoth possessed him. He explains that he saw himself holding it, and the next thing he knew, it felt like he was merging with his body. One of the officials then asks him to work with them for a better future. He is skeptical, but they tell him that the answer has already been decided. They are the only ones who can save him. Meanwhile, Miki and Mina are making out in the examination room. Miki wonders when they will be able to see each other again and expresses his fear about not knowing how long he will be able to remain human. Mina assures him that the organization is doing their best and that he will return to normal someday. Miki admits he's worried about her ending up with another man while he's asleep, but Mina tells him she would never do that and would always be thinking about him. Just as they're about to kiss, Miki receives a call from Kyoka, who wants him to come to the armory because Marcus is by himself and feeling nervous. After the call ends, Miki grabs Mina and they resume kissing. Guy is out on the streets and sees a couple of dead bodies. He spots Tatsumi on a building, and a Tanbokiri spear overwhelms Tatsumi, causing him to completely transform into a Busoma. Tatsumi jumps down and attacks Guy. They begin to fight, and Guy stabs Tatsumi in the chest, defeating him. A helicopter informs the Shoshidai about a Busoma in sight. Back at the organization, Marcus is excited to see Miki and hugs him, crying. Kyoka shows Marcus where the weapons recovered by the Shoshidai are being kept. Just then, Kyoka receives a call about an emergency regarding a Busoma and a chrysalis being found. She excuses herself and leaves. The helicopter continues to hover over Tatsumi and Guy and start firing at them, forcing Tatsumi to flee. Guy cuts through the helicopter with a dark aura from the Shiru, causing it to crash. Kyoka is informed that headquarters has requested support for a chrysalis. The man asks if they should send Miki, but Kyoka declines, saying he has worked more than enough. She has someone else in mind. Guy makes it back home but is too weak. Sayaka goes to help him, and the Shiryu begins choking him. Eamon comes to the rescue, pulling the hand away from Guy's neck. He succeeds and Guy passes out for a little while, then awakes, looking confused. Meanwhile, as Shoshidai, Marcus and Miki are still together in the weapons room. Miki tells Marcus all about the swords as they walk around. He explains that a chrysalis must sleep to remain a chrysalis, and that one of the Shoshidai's duties is to put them to sleep. He adds that just as a chrysalis becomes a butterfly, they too will eventually become Busoma. The purpose of putting them to sleep is to delay that process. Once they become Busoma, they lose their own will and become the weapon itself, driven only by one thought: to kill. Miora arrives at a prison but is told to leave as the place is off limits. He refuses and uses the Zyokyoin to kill the guards. An announcement is made about an intruder, but Miura defeats everyone in his path. The prisoners ask him to release them, but he instead tells them that their desire to kill and their hatred feeds him. He casts a dark aura from the Zetsukein into the prisoners, becoming more powerful. Miki and Marcus are placed into capsules, and the cold sleep is initiated, while Seiya is released. At the Ogata house, Sayaka is looking for Guy. An apprentice also tells her that he hasn't seen Tatsumi. Meanwhile, Tatsumi is in hiding as his wounds still hurt. He sees a dog, kills it, and then kills the owner who comes searching for it. Sayaka continues searching the house for Guy. She hears a sound coming from a room and sees Guy peeping from the wardrobe. When she opens the door, Guy shuts it again. Sayaka forces it open, causing Guy to fall over, but he crawls back under the blanket. When Sayaka scolds him and drags the blanket away, Guy ignores her and runs off. He heads to the pond to play, but when a butterfly lands on his hand, he unintentionally cuts off its wings with his gaze. Sayaka, confused by the whole situation, tells Amon that Guy is acting weird, and Guy runs off again. Seiya awakens, and Kyoka informs him that he has been asleep for 16 years. She introduces herself as the administrator, but Seiya remembers Miora as the administrator and asks if Miora got promoted. Kyoka tells him he doesn't need to know about that right now, as she has a job for him. Seiya realizes it must be important if she woke him for it. Eamon and Sayaka find Guy and realize that he has reverted back to being a baby. Amon assumes that Guy fears Shiryu's power, and by reverting to a baby, he's escaping from it. Seiya takes a nice shower and prepares for the mission. Seiya's core Alma is a chakram, a weapon of Vishnu, the highest god since creation. Seiya sets out on his mission, and despite it being Kyoka's first mission with him, she feels confident because she has heard much about the chakram and Seiya's fighting abilities. Kyoka narrates a tale of a country that angered the gods. A messenger of the gods, wielding a circle of light, came to punish the king and his people. The light burned everything to ash. The ring of light used by the messenger is the chakram, which was left behind and worshipped as a weapon of the gods before being sealed away. Kyoka also mentions that Seiya, the wielder of the chakram, is the Shoshidai's ultimate chrysalis. Meanwhile, Sayaka brings dinner for Guy, only to find that he is missing. She eventually meets Guy at his mother's grave. As it begins to rain, Guy starts to cry. Sayaka remembers his condition and comforts him. She promises to take him to a festival happening that day. In another scene, Eamon meets with Kigetsu and they discuss Guy. Kigetsu points out that Eamon's decision to forge the Shiryu into an arm for Guy is a bold move. He is concerned that the evil of the Shiryu could consume Guy. Amon tells him that he had thought it over, but the Shiryu has been Guy's protector since birth, and only the Shiryu can cut through the blade within Guy's heart. Kagetsu points out that there might be two Shiryu blades. Amon agrees, stating that if that is the case, then the Shiryu they know is the lesser of the two, as no name has been carved into it. They conclude that a superior version must exist somewhere. At Fujishiro's sword sharpening, Kiyomi is obsessed with the katana blade she is working on. She shares her knowledge about the blade with Haita. She then licks it and, from the taste, can figure out where it was made. Kiyomi begins begging Haita to cut her with the blade, but he refuses. Seiya is upset that his first mission in a while is in the middle of nowhere. Meanwhile, Sayaka and Guy are preparing for the festival, but Tatsumi is monitoring Sayaka. They both have a good time and play a lot of games together. Haita brings in a sword from a new customer and Kiyomi opens it. The aura is strong and Kiyomi figures it's the Shiryu, but she knows that Amon destroyed his. She proceeds to sharpen it, but it suddenly produces a deafening sound. Kiyomi tries to be focused, but an eyeball grows from the sword and Kiyomi gets possessed. She gets the urge to kill and suddenly attacks Haita, who dodges all her attacks. Kiyomi comes back to herself and orders Haita to leave and not return until she says it's okay. She continues sharpening while the Shiryu still seeks more blood. Kiyomi has to cut herself and pour the blood on the Shiryu to continue sharpening. While Zuso Gewon plays the piano, he's confronted by Flamberge, who seeks revenge. Zuso Gewon tells him that he's never lost a battle, but Flamberge has lost to him once. They transform and begin fighting, but unknown to them, they're being watched by Grimm's and Arnie's. Arnie's comments that the Zolkehen has killed a lot of Busoma, and Grimm's adds that he has trained quite well. He says that humanity is nearing death and the era of Busoma is near. Zolkehenwen defeats Flamberge. After the festival, Sayaka takes Guy to pray. She asks the gods to watch over him and help him return to his former self. However, Guy just stares at her, looking confused. On their way home, they are confronted by Tatsumi, who is after Sayaka. He attacks them, and Guy instinctively blocks the attack, but Tatsumi knocks him away. Sayaka goes to Guy's aid, but Tatsumi takes her. He tells her she belongs to him alone and points his Tombokiri spear at her neck. His hand is suddenly cut away, and he lets go of Sayaka. Saya's chakram flies back to him, and he tells Sayaka that Tatsumi is now a Busoma and is not human anymore. Tombokiri picks up his weapon and attacks Saya, who effortlessly blocks him. Back at Fujishiro, the owner of the Shiryu sword comes for it. Meanwhile, Kiyomi is having a hard time. The man says goodbye to Haita, but before he leaves, Haita asks about the sword, but he ignores him and leaves. Seiya and the Tombokiri are still at it. Seiya knows there's no way to save Tatsumi as he's already been totally consumed by the Tombokiri. He then decides to end it. Seiya summons a bigger chakram and restricts Tombokiri with it, eventually defeating it by causing the Tombokiri to vanish. He calls the job a boring one and apologizes to Guy and Sayaka, telling them to think of it as a bad dream. Seiya turns to leave, but feels an energy surge from Guy. He realizes that's who he really came for and goes back to him, but Guy is still clueless. Seiya approaches Guy and punches him, causing Guy to fall helplessly to the ground. Sayaka runs to help him and protects him from Seiya. Seiya tells Sayaka to go home and not get involved with Guy. Seiya figures that Guy has regressed to a childlike state, but says Guy can't run from who he is. He pushes Sayaka away and asks Guy to show him who he really is. Higetsu interrupts Seiya, asking to confirm he's from Shoshidai. As the ruckus dies down, Kigetsu asks what Seiya plans to do with Guy. Seiya mentions Guy's fate depends on him, adding that if he can control himself, then he'll be taken to Shoshidai. Otherwise, he'll kill him, and Sayaka strongly protests against that last bit. He questions how Kigetsu knows about Shoshidai. According to Kigetsu, as one grows old, one forms all sorts of relationships, not just with the Shoshidai, but also with Gabi. Seiya tells him that the Gabis are not worth mentioning and they're just playing a child's game. Soin from Gabi arrives and interrupts him. He tells Seiya that the Shoshidai uses evil to fight evil. Kigetsu introduces Soin and says that he has been residing there to track down Busoma. Seiya mocks Soin, saying he hates when Gabi plays soldiers as they're merely human, and fighting Busoma is a difficult task for him. Soin tells him that in the end, Seiya would also become Busoma, saying maybe he should just kill Seiya there. Sayaka tells Kagetsu to stop them, but he refuses, saying that they won't be satisfied unless they fight. Adds that it's not often you see a Gabi and Shoshidai fight. Kagetsu is eager to see them fight. Soin attacks first and Seiya blocks it. He then decides to use his chakram as he didn't think Soin would be a match for him. Soin is amazed by Seiya's powers. Something grows out from the ground below So-in, and Guy throws a stone at it, but it hits So-in instead. So-in is annoyed and turns to Guy, but Sayaka begs on Guy's behalf, saying he's a child. So one pushes her away and picks up Guy, saying his aura is filled with evil. A Busoma arises from So-wan's shadow and kills him. The Busoma was waiting in So-wan's shadow for a chance to strike. The Busoma attacks Guy too, which leads to Guy finally awakening. He strikes back and stabs the Busoma in the face. Kagetsu comments that Guy's aura is overwhelming. Guy then cuts the Busoma. Kagetsu thinks the fight is over, but the Busoma attacks back and vanishes. Seiya decides to use the opportunity to find out for himself whether Guy would become a Busoma. Kagetsu comments that Guy is at a disadvantage, and true to his words, Guy cannot defeat Seiya's chakram and is pushed down. Sayaka runs to help him, but Seiya tells her to move. Guy then comes back to himself, but Seiya tells him he's not the face he wants to see and wants to attack, but Kagetsu is on him and rizzes him, giving a chance for Guy and Sayaka to escape as Seiya tries to break free from Kagetsu. Seiya finally gets him off and threatens to kill him, but Kagetsu tells him that he'll tell him where Guy escaped to. Seiya gives him a chance, and Kagetsu starts telling Seiya about Guy's arm and offers to take him to where Guy stays. Seiya agrees, but threatens that he'll slice his head off the next time he comes close to him. Kagetsu takes Seiya to Amon and says Seiya came to learn about Guy and the Shiryu. Kagetsu then asks Amon to elaborate on Guy's blade. Amon starts by saying that Guy's heart is still trapped in the darkness of his mother's womb. Meanwhile, Guy and Sayaka are in a cave. His wounds have healed, and he asks Sayaka what happened to him. He gets flashbacks of everything, but Sayaka tells him not to worry, and once the rain stops, they'll head back home and ask Amon for help. To lighten the mood, Sayaka reminds Guy that they usually came to play in the cave when they were kids. Guy says he doesn't have any pleasant memories and tells her that he always ran away from home. Sayaka tells him she remembers, but that he always came home. Guy says it's because every time he ran, he realized he had nowhere to go. Sayaka gets the hint that he isn't running from them and asks what he's always running from. Guy says the darkness. He explains that no matter how far he ran and searched for a different world, there was no use and the darkness followed him everywhere and would try to kill him. He adds that he couldn't escape even if he tried, and that's why he decided to change the way he thought. He's determined to use the sword he makes and slice open the world and the darkness trying to kill him. Sayaka is sacred and tells Guy that there's still light in the world. Guy tells her that they both live in different worlds and, hence, see different things. Sayaka tries to comfort him, saying he has her and Amon, but Guy refuses it, saying he has no family. He asks Sayaka to leave him alone, saying he wants to take a nap. Back at home, Kagetsu and Amon are still discussing. He asks Amon to tell them more about the Shiryu. Amon informs them that the Shiryu was forged by a dragon. He narrates that during the Muromachi period, there was a shrine not far from the capital where the horn of a dragon was worshipped. One of the servants was overcome with a wicked idea and took the horn with his wife. Along the way, they have doubts and decide to check if it's really the horn. As they open it, a dragon spirit appears and enters into the girl. The girl became pregnant and gave birth, but the baby was covered with scales and had the eyes and horns of a dragon, so they wrapped it and sent it down a river. The baby was taken by an aged swordsmith and later became his student. The swordsmith later passed away, and the dragon swordsmith continued the business. He improved his skills and eventually became famous. He finally had a family and was happy that his baby was normal. The dragon swordsmith's reputation reached the shogun at that time, and he was ordered to create a sword without equal. The dragon swordsmith began to create the greatest blade of his generation. The shogun then requested to be presented to him in person, but he cannot present himself to others. The shogun then asks him to take off the mask, and when he does, the shogun orders for him and his family to be killed. His wife and child were then executed, but blades could not pierce his skin. His life energy was beyond human understanding, and no method of execution could harm him. In the end, they gave up and settled on throwing him into the sea many leagues away. He questions his life and then determines to leave his wrath upon the world. He begins working tirelessly day and night, and with the lesser of the swords, he slew himself. He also sends the blade to destroy the shogun. After that, the two Shiryu went missing, but it said that sometimes the shadow of Shiryu can be seen when important or powerful people are slain. Kagetsu comments that the story is a sad one and says it explains Shiryu's murderous rage. Seiya is crying and says the part where the wife and child were murdered was so sad. Kagetsu realizes Seiya is tender-hearted and hands him a tissue. Amon tells him that he can sense Seiya is the same as Guy. They're chased by darkness. Amon asks Seiya who he is, but Seiya refuses to tell him. He says he's only interested in Guy and will stay until he gets back. Morning comes and Guy finally arrives, and Kigetsu questions if he'd like to go to a different world. He tells him that. He tells him everything he needs to know about the Shoshidai. Sayaka is against the idea, and Guy looks at Amon fit confirmation. Amon tells him that it's his decision and he's old enough to leave, but advises that it may be best for Guy to go with Seiya. Sayaka protests, and Kagetsu tells her that Seiya is not a bad guy. He adds that Guy is a sword yet to be fully forged, and he can't wait to see what kind of sword he becomes. Guy finally decides to go with Seiya. Guy and Seiya continue their journey down a road. Seiya's driving is reckless, and his excuse when Guy complains is that he hasn't driven in 16 years. Seiya mentions that before going to Shoshidai, he has somewhere to go and that Guy would be joining him. They arrive at an elderly lady's place sooner. As she gets the door for them, Seiya asks to confirm that she is Kei. She recognizes him and welcomes him home. While they wait for her tea, Seiya compliments the roses, saying they're still pretty. Kei agrees and adds that roses are seen as a symbol of restored youth because of their nature. Seiya asks how she has been and if she's married. He continues that it's his fault for leaving her for so long and asks her to tell him the truth. He simply laughs, referring to what Seiya said as a joke. She says they're together every day, adding they saw a movie the previous day. Guy is confused, and before he says anything, Seiya cuts in, saying he was just joking, and justifies Guy's reaction, saying he doesn't understand city jokes since he's from the country. Just then, the tea is ready, and Kei heads to prepare it. Seiya signals Guy outside. When they're outside, Guy asks who the lady is, and Seiya answers that it is his girlfriend. Seiya explains all chrysalises will someday become Busoma, adding Guy will eventually become one too. To delay the process, they're put into a cold sleep at the Shoshidai. Preserved in ice, they're dreamless, shut down, and are only awakened when their powers are needed. He hasn't seen Kei for the 16 years he has been away, and the other times he's been shut down. He met her in high school, where she was a year younger than him, but since one doesn't age during cold sleep, she grew old while he remained the same. In all these, Kei never questioned, and he suspects she knew she couldn't. The rules are to keep Shoshidai a secret from civilians. Seiya adds that although most people would have given up, Kei has always waited for him. With a complete change of tone, he asks Gay away to give them some space, and Gay reluctantly leaves. Arriving back at the house, Seiya explains to Kei that Guy left to give them their privacy. Guy is walking down the streets of the city when he comes across a signpost. It has Sword Souls written on it, and this piques Guy's interest. Sword Souls is a versus fighting game, as the commentator says in the arena. They're down to their final match, a challenger versus the defending champion Midoriko, an idol. The match begins, and Midoriko is outplaying her challenger. When Guy finds out it's just a game, he tries to go out, but the crowd is too wild and he's trapped. Midoriko finally delivers the winning attack, and the match is ended. She basks in the praises she is receiving. Seiya is having a dance with Kei back at her house. The song brings back good memories, and they reminisce in them. As they dance, Kei accidentally hurts her leg. Seiya rushes to help her, and she assures she's fine. He notices her toenail polish has faded and later helps her paint them. Seiya tells Kei to ask for anything she wants him to do if there is any. As Kei says, Seiya is kind. He is confident as he has always been. Kei mentions a couple of times he was otherwise, like when he made her ride a roller coaster against her will. She is having fun as she mentions a couple more instances, and then a time when Seiya jumped into a lake to save her hat, mentioning that it was kind of him. Kei reveals she still has a lot of places she'd love to go to with Seiya and lists a few. Seiya jokes that she's asking for a lot, and she disagrees, mentioning that they're still in their 20s. Seiya looks concerned, but immediately suggests they go to the lake. Kei is really happy and runs off to prepare. As she leaves, a telephone in the room rings and then goes to voicemail. It is a call from Kei's care worker. She asks if Kei has decided to go to the hospital she suggested, adding the doctor said she may not survive another attack. Before the voicemail ends, she urges Kei to decide on a home to go to, as it is dangerous for her to stay alone. After listening, Seiya heads up to meet Kei. He sees when he arrives that her mirror is covered up. Just then, Kei comes from behind, calling Seiya an illusion. Even as she touches him, she still believes he isn't real. But that doesn't matter to Kei. Midoriko is tired and relaxes in her quarters. She becomes irritated when the errand she sent is not carried out properly. She complains about her boredom and that there is no point in being alive, and then leaves for the restroom. While in the restroom, she encounters her opponent and is startled. He apologizes for the scare and mentions he wanted to speak with her. He shares that a year ago, he was feeling suicidal due to some issues at work. However, seeing her smile made a difference for him. He felt that if a girl could smile so brightly, then perhaps the world wasn't as bad as he thought. He says he no longer feels depressed, has found a new job and thanks her for it, calling her an angel. After staring quietly at him for a while, Midoriko speaks, expressing her disgust at the fact that people always tell her the same thing. She's sick of names like that, which she frequently hears, and asks if he has nothing else. She is being mean, and as she leaves, she calls him a bore. He stays down, sobbing. Flamebird, the flame sword, stumbles through an alley with its injured host from the encounter with Z-Solt Gawin. It seeks a new body. Midoriko is being interviewed. She is asked what the secret to her power is, and she coldly replies she doesn't have any. She mentions it's boring, and ripping them apart makes her feel a little better. Heading back home, Midoriko meets her opponent again on her way. He asks what is making her depressed and offers to help. As she helped him, Midoriko quickly attacks him, bashing him with her back multiple times. She is enjoying this and tells him to die, among other things. As if being possessed, he suddenly fights back, beating her into a pulp. He keeps on repeating his desire to save her as he countlessly slams her against the wall. Just then, the flame sword emerges from its old body and heads to the scene. As it lands, it urges Midoriko to take it up, promising to make her something more than human. When she finally takes it up and it possesses her, she speedily cuts down her opponent to bits. He runs happily along the lake, while Seiya worries, reminding her to be careful not to fall. She reassures him that she's fine and calls him a worrywart. She's having so much fun and even asks Seiya to chase her, which he advises against but is forced to. For a moment, Seiya sees the young Ki. Just before his fear comes true and she falls, she stares into the water in front of her, and when her delusion of being young clears, it's just old her. In denial of who that was, she has an attack, and Seiya hurries to help. He wants to take Ki to a hospital, but she pleads that he take her home. Midoriko terrorizes the city with the power of the flame sword. Guy hurries to the scene and transforms after being affected by an attack by the flame sword. The Kyoka watches from Shoshidai. Seeing it is Flamebird the flame sword. She requests for Seiya, but is told he isn't available. Midoriko notices Guy and refers to him as a mini-boss just before they begin fighting. She seems to have the upper hand and Guy is getting exhausted. At Ki's house, after preparing, Seiya suggests they go to the hospital now, but Ki disapproves. She asks him to open her closet, and he is surprised when he does. There's a beautiful dress there, and she says she has been waiting for his proposal. Seiya sees she's been waiting for a long time and quickly does. She is really happy and asks Seiya to help her put the dress on. When she has it on, she thanks Seiya just before the pain intensifies. Seiya hurries to her aid and helps her to the bed. Kei reveals she thought Seiya was an illusion, but admits she was wrong and that he's real. Seiya opens up about a question he has always had, asking if Kei was happy after she met him or if he ruined her life. Kei replies saying she doesn't even want to think about life without him. Seiya once again sees young Kei. With a goodbye kiss, she passes on. Kyoka asks for any other available chrysalises in the absence of Seiya, but just then he replies saying he'll go. Guy is holding his own against Midoriko, but soon gets overpowered. Just before she finishes him off, Seiya interferes. Midoriko refers to him as the big boss just before blocking off his attacks. As she compliments his attack, she vanishes, escaping. Seiya helps Guy up and they head their way. 8. A woman is relaxing on her yacht, about to sip from her glass when she suddenly notices something. Yasuko, the woman, calls for her errand boy, Billy, and complains about the drink before pouring it on his face as he apologizes. He offers to prepare another drink, but she declines, instead instructing him to rub some ointment on her, adding she doesn't want wrinkles. While in the process, Yasuko asks what Billy will do when they find the treasure, and he looks confused, so she mentions specifically Pirate Throla's treasure, asking what he thought they were in the middle of the ocean for. Catching on, Billy says he'll buy a house for his father and mother when the treasure is found, and Yasuko admires that. A diver calls on her, mentioning he found Throla's treasure, and both Yasuko and Billy are surprised. The whole crew stares at the crate for a while before Yasuko opens it. There are only bottles in there and no treasures. After checking it out, one of the divers finds out it's champagne and happily drinks it. Yasuko is frustrated and calls them all useless, mentioning she hired them because they were treasure hunters and calling their efforts pathetic, just before gulping down the same wine. In the city, Issei, a hairstylist and beautician, attends to a customer. He's pretty good at this and can even tell the way she's been living and the number of strands her hair has just by the feel of her hair. He is finally done and hands her over to one of his staff. Back on the yacht, they all discuss what they'll do with their share of the treasure if only Yasuko is true and gives it to them. Yasuko points out that they should find the treasure before worrying about their share. The captain mentions to Yasuko that talking about their dreams would give the men motivation. Personally, he'd love to get a ship as he can't be hired captain forever. The professor, after being asked, he doesn't want any. As an archaeologist, he expresses his only desire is to see Galen's hammer. Yasuko is curious, and the professor explains it's a legendary weapon pirate Throlla allegedly possessed. He mentions its existence dates back to ancient Greece. They are curious and want to know more. In those days, combat tournaments were held twice a year before the king, attracting many who risked their lives for honor and wealth. Winners were rumored to possess swords forged by a blacksmith named Galen. One day, a knight who had won with Galen's sword killed him to keep the weapons exclusive. Galen's son wept for 3 days until urged by a voice from his father's hammer to seek revenge. Using the hammer, he entered the tournament, defeated the knight, and won by destroying the swords of his opponents. However, at the celebratory feast, the king poisoned him, fearing the hammer's power. The hammer got stained with blood and poison. The king seized the hammer, but his reign soon crumbled, as it was believed the hammer poisoned him, leading to the demise of his family. While others are frightened by the story, Yasuko dismisses it, referring to Galen's hammer as scrap metal. She's all about finding the treasure. When asked about her dream, she expresses her desire to live a fun and easy life. She reveals that she has been married 5 times, all of her husbands are deceased, and her inheritance is running out. Yasuko emphasizes that she is risking everything she has on this treasure hunt, insisting that they must find the treasure the following day. Issei models for some camera shot. After getting reports on how good the sales from their previous article were, he gets interviewed for another, but more personal one. When asked what type of girl he likes and dislikes, he mentions he likes a girl who isn't bald and dislikes one who is. After being asked, he mentions his motivation to continue being a stylist is that he's looking for the girl with the most beautiful hair in the world. The interviewer asks what he'll do when he finds her, and he replies he'll kill her with his own hands. He breaks the quick tension by calling it a joke, saying he'd fall in love and might even propose to the girl on the spot. Issei drives, saying in his mind, it wasn't a joke. If he eventually finds the girl with the most beautiful hair in the world, he'll kill her. He vows never to forgive her. She murdered his sister and he would never forget that hair. The next day, as Billy is cleaning up, he gets alerted by one of the hunters who says he has found the treasure. Yasuko is so overjoyed on seeing this that she stuffs her mouth with the gold like a fat goblin. As they sit amidst the treasure, they remind Yasuko of their share. She gives them her word, as she claims she's a generous person. The captain mentions he hasn't seen Galen's hammer, but the professor says he's sure it's in the area. Just then, they notice one of the hunters, Dick, is missing. Yasuko suspects he's probably drunk, but says she'll go check on her way to the restroom. When she sees him at first, she thinks he's passed out, but she soon realizes he's dead. Issei gets notified he has a new customer, and he's on it. He welcomes the customer and is about to get on to business. On holding the hair, he realizes it's the one he's been looking for. She asks what the problem is, but he replies, there's none. He is certain it is her and can't forget the fact that she killed his sister. She then says to Issei that they are connected. He's curious, but she asks him not to worry about it and work. As he makes her hair, she tells him he'll soon acquire a legendary sword, which further confuses Issei. She mentions the sword's name is Nebistigma, adding, it's a sword in which a snow fairy dwells. She continues that its origin is from a long time ago when 2 country bumpkins fell in love with a snow fairy. The 2 men fought each other for her love. The loser, just before dying, reached out and asked the fairy for a final wish, to hold him as he died. She granted his wish, but just then, he ripped out his rib and killed her with it. He would rather kill her than let someone else have her. The rib that killed her became Nebistigma. Issei doesn't seem like he cares much about that. He is finished with the hair, and she likes it. Everyone on the yacht is freaking out. They all suspect each other as they believe the killer wants all the treasure. They notice the professor is with them, and the surviving hunter heads on to go check by himself as he doesn't trust them. They hear a scream and hurry to help. Yasuko gets separated from the others and wanders around, searching for them. She finds the hunter dead, and then the captain. She's afraid, she trembles. Just then, the professor chokes her with a rope from behind. It was him all along. He apologizes, stating that now he has seen the treasures, he wants it all for himself. Billy attacks him from behind, freeing Yasuko. She's relieved and thanks Billy, promising to give him anything he wants. Billy, to her surprise, reveals he's grateful to the professor for killing the others and tells Yasuko she's going to die. She struggles to dodge and hold off his knife but gets thrown off into the ocean in the process. As she drowns, she longs to leave, expressing she refuses to die. Then she hears a voice telling her not to be afraid. It's from Galen's hammer below the ocean. It promises to grant her power and urges her to take it. As the lady with the most beautiful hair walks, she notices she's being followed and asks that the person come out. It is Issei, and she claims she knew it. He asks why she killed his sister, and she says she doesn't need a reason to kill someone. She adds if she had to give one, it would be because she is a weapon. Issei is enraged. He calls her a psycho killer and aims to attack. As she shoots her, to his surprise, she heals quickly. Issei asks if she's a monster, and she explains 2 weapons dwell in her body and says she'll give him one. Freaked out by what he's seeing, Issei continues to fire at her, but it's meaningless. She reminds him she said the sword will dwell in him and then puts Nebastigma in Issei as he screams. Before leaving, she mentions he'll become a Busoma someday and then he'll disappear. Issei is agitated and screams in frustration. Back on the yacht, Billy makes arrangements for his rescue. He sees a ship pass and calls for help. Just as he's calling for help, Yasuko emerges from the water with Galen's hammer. She wastes no time before lunging at him. Long ago, there lived a young man named Kanata, the offspring of a human father and a fairy mother, born with knowledge and strength beyond humans. Kanata's mother gave him halberd, an ancient weapon from the fairy world when he was 18. According to her, when used for justice, halberd grants its bearer power. But if used for evil, it brings its bearer great disaster. Kanata went into the battlefield and followed his mother's words, using halberd only for justice as he defeated 100 enemies single-handedly for the safety of the village and became a hero. But when he returned to the village, he found that his lover married someone else in his absence. Filled with rage out of being betrayed and jealousy, he killed the couple with halberd. It turned crimson and began attacking the innocent. He killed the villagers and finally his parents, as if being controlled by halberd. Halberd continued its slaughter until Kanata died of exhaustion. Kyoka, who was narrating this, mentions that Seiya and Marcus are to bring the weapon to her. Their target is Sekiya, the real estate company. They received information that the CEO, Shuntaro Sekiya, recently bought the weapon. She mentions Agent Mina has already infiltrated the organization as his secretary since Mr. Sekiya is ill and needs a secretary with nursing skills. Naoki is concerned, but soon gets into the act. They ask to see Mr. Sekiya, like they're from another company. Seiya and Guy sit out to eat. Seiya is still thinking about Kei and what happened when he notices Guy is staring. Guy reminds him of their destination, but Seiya says he wants to enjoy it a little as it's been a while since he was outside. He suggests Guy does all he wants now because when they are put to cold sleep, they don't know when next they'll be brought out. But Guy says he has no plans. Seiya explains to Guy that they can't enjoy themselves like others since they're constantly put to cold sleep and they can only remember what was. He further says it's their only way to exist in this world. He asks Guy what he has seen in his life. Naoki meets with Mina, and Marcus is surprised to see they're together. She goes straight to business, saying there's a ground floor for executives and the halberd is kept there in a safe. She explains a route they can take there, and Naoki appreciates it. As they head on with it, Mina warns them of the tight security. While in the elevator, Marcus asks Naoki about him and Mina, and he confirms they're dating, asking Marcus to keep it a secret, as they aren't allowed to keep in work relationships, and Marcus understands. They reach an area off limits to the public. The place is full of cameras, but Marcus has an idea. Using the power of his Azov sword, he surrounds them both with darkness and they can't be seen through the camera. From the men bathroom, they continue through the air vents, and Marcus expresses his displeasure for filthy places like the vents. Not being able to withstand it any longer, he rushes out right after Naoki as they reach their destination. Naoki contacts Mina to let her know there's been an issue. After opening the first safe, there was another and they needed another password. As Naoki asks for any idea Mina might have, Marcus leans into the lock and unintentionally undergoes the security eye scan. Since his eye doesn't match the scan, it triggers the alarm and gas emission protocol, and the air vents shut, trapping them there. As Marcus apologizes, Naoki explains the situation to Mina and asks her to find clues for the password. While she's on it, Marcus tries cutting down the safe, but it doesn't work, and so their escape is fully dependent on Mina. Mina keeps on searching for clues for the password, but just then, Mr. Sekiya arrives. He asks what she's doing, and she lies that she wants to confirm his medicines are stocked. Reporting that they're all stocked and she needs to get the one that isn't, she tries to leave. Mr. Sekiya grabs her, stopping her from escaping, and mentions she can't fool him. He knows what she's after and stresses betrayal is unforgivable while revealing he has possession of the weapon. Mina quickly alerts Naoki that halberd isn't in the safe and that Mr. Sekiya knows about the plan. Naoki is worried about Mina, but also is in trouble as Mr. Sekiya's men close in on them. Mr. Sekiya takes out his weapon and begins his attack on Mina. As Mr. Sakiya's men arrive, they don't see anyone. Naoki and Marcus had busted out through the vents. Mr. Sakiya continues attacking Mina, but fortunately, Naoki gets there before he finishes her off. Naoki and Marcus attack, and Mr. Sakiya pushes Mina to them as a distraction. He strikes, but Naoki moves Mina out of the way, and the blade gets his shoulder. Naoki stops him from pulling his blade out, giving Marcus a chance to deliver a killing strike on Mr. Sakiya. As Mr. Sakiya dies, Halbert starts speaking and mentions it lives on, although its host dies. It says, now lives inside Naoki and enters his body. Naoki is going through much pain, and both Mina and Marcus are worried. He suddenly bursts into laughter after pretending to pass on. He apologizes for scaring them, assuring them he's fine. Mina intends to call Shoshidai, but Naoki mentions since they're done with the mission, they should spend time together. Now they're both outside, explaining they don't know when they'll see each other again if he returns to Shoshidai. Mina agrees on the condition that Naoki is actually fine, and he claims he is, and Marcus gives them their space and leaves. Mina once again expresses her worries, as Naoki now possesses 2 weapons, which is too much strain. Lijath. As Naoki reassures her, he briefly feels the influence of the weapons urging him to kill. Still, he assures Mina he's fine, as she asks what the matter is. They go on, having a good time together and trying out several fun things, really utilizing the opportunity. At the end of the day, they sit together discussing it. They have at their Guinness Book of Record kiss, but Naoki gets interrupted by the murderous urge from the weapons. As he struggles to fight it, he tells Mina to run. He can no longer hold back, and it lets loose, wielding both weapons. Kyoka sees this from Shoshidai and how serious it is, and she orders they send Marcus. Seiya and Guy are still out. Guy ponders on what Seiya asked him. He thinks of what he has seen, and Sayaka, Amen, and his mother's grave come to his mind. He feels the sword is watching over him, as it has seen all he has seen as well. Just then, they get a call, and Seiya notifies Guy that their break is over. Naoki is still possessed by the 2 weapons, and he doesn't recognize anyone, even Mina. He attacks her without thinking or holding back. Marcus arrives at the scene to stop him, but his efforts are futile. Just then, Seiya intervenes. His attack from a distance lures Naoki from the others to him, and he mentions only he can satisfy the monster in Naoki. Naoki, all fired up, transforms into a Busoma and starts fighting Seiya. Seiya sees Naoki hasn't fully become a Busoma even as he transforms. The fighting continues and Naoki is getting destructive. Guy's arm aches to join as he watches from the sidelines. Naoki soon starts overpowering Seiya, but Guy joins the fight, intervening. He holds his own for a while before Naoki attacks with a blast. Seiya jumps in front of it to tank it, saving Guy. Naoki is about to continue attacking when Mina draws his attention. For the moment, she tries making him remember her and himself. Naoki stops attacking. As he struggles to get a grip on himself, Guy strikes him from behind, ending the fight. He falls into Mina's arms. Back at Shoshidai, Naoki is being examined. He reverted to a human because he didn't fully become a Busoma. From the analysis, a cold sleep won't help this time since he could become a Busoma at any time as he holds 2 Alma. The best course of action is to recover the weapon. Naoki is up, and Mina assures him the exam results say he's fine and would be okay when put into cold sleep, and Naoki is glad. He apologizes for trying to hurt her, stating he doesn't have the right to love her, but adds he can't let her go. Mina is fine and asks him not to apologize. Naoki and Marcus are ready to be put into cold sleep and bid farewell. In the last moments, Naoki's desires to live an average life, have kids, and get a house replay. For him, the process this time is different from the regular cold sleep, and he struggles as his body withers away. Mina watches as the memory of Naoki asking her to be his wife lingers on her mind. A boy, Shin, is struggling to sleep. The Shiryu is crying again. During breakfast, he tells his butler, Tokumitsu, about it. They think maybe the Shiryu is crying in search of its fellow. A maid interrupts their discussion to announce Shin's expected visitors have arrived. The first visitor, Shinohara, proposes to build an orphanage and has found the perfect building for sale, surrounded by nature. Shin loves the idea and gives his approval. The next visitor, Kurata, wants to build a nursing home for senior citizens. Shin also loves this idea, but unfortunately, Kurata wants the same building that Shinohara has chosen. Amen finds Sayaka staring at the empty spot where Shiryu once lay. She is thinking about Guy and feels disappointed that he left, especially since they have been together since childhood. Amen tells her that she doesn't understand. Guy is guided by the destiny of the Shiryu. Sayaka questions why Amen shaped the Shiryu into an arm if he knew that would happen. She worries about Guy's future. Amon reassures her that Guy is trying to live as a sword and that he was merely offering assistance. However, Sayaka insists that Guy is a normal person and cannot live as a sword, and then she walks away. Amon says a sword is fated to kill from the moment of its birth, but with a sheath, the sword can choose its own fate. He believes that if Guy is an unsheathed sword with humanity as his sheath, he may be able to slice open his fate. Amon wonders which fate Guy will choose. Sayaka stares at the moon. She claims she's the only one who truly knows Guy, the real Guy. She wonders if he is still himself, the boy who saved her when they were kids. It was on a day when Guy ran away and she chased after him. In the midst of her pursuit, she encountered a wild animal, but Guy intervened and saved her. He came back to protect her and shed blood for her sake. Sayaka says she can tell Guy is looking up at the same moon she is. Indeed, he is. Seiya approaches Guy, and Guy asks him to confirm that he still doesn't want to go to a hospital. Seiya explains that chrysalises heal quickly, and Guy should try harder to comfort him if he's worried since he got hurt protecting Guy. Guy retorts that he didn't ask for that. He then questions why Seiya chose to protect him, to which Seiya replies that it's because Guy is incredibly weak. Guy refuses to believe this. Seiya then asks if there's a girl Guy likes or anyone he wants to be with. Guy responds that he has been alone since he was born and will always be. Seiya agrees that it's an easy way to live, but he adds that only a child thinks it's their problem if they live or die. He explains that Guy has nothing to protect and no one to love, which makes him unable to protect himself. This is why he is weak. Meanwhile, Shin and the others go to check out a building. Shinohara and Kurata begin to argue about which plan to is better. Shin admires the view and starts drawing. He sketches a child and an elderly man, which gives him an idea. He suggests combining a retirement home with an orphanage. The elderly could give the kids plenty of attention, and the orphans could be like grandkids to them, but both Shinohara and Kurata agree with the idea. And Tokumitsu commends Shin for his creativity. Shin believes that sometimes combining two opposites is what opens the way. At school, Sayaka's friends notice that she has been gloomy lately. Sayaka apologizes and denies being gloomy. One of the girls suggests they go somewhere to take whatever it is off her mind. She suggests a famous cake shop and the other girls agree. To their surprise, Sayaka agrees as well. Kazuma visits Mr. Kagetsu to discuss Scion, but first apologizes for the trouble they caused. Kagetsu assures him not to worry about it, as dealing with the dead is his specialty and he gave Scion a proper burial. Kazuma expresses disappointment that Scion failed to notice the Busoma lurking in his shadow, noting that there is still much for them to learn. He then asks what happened to the Busoma, to which Kagetsu replies that it disappeared after fighting Guy. Kazuma learns that Guy is a chrysalis, referring to them as impure beings that will someday become Busoma. Kagetsu warns him not to speak like that, reminding him that both the Shoshidai and Gabi wish to defeat the Busoma, suggesting that they should work together. Kazuma defends the Gabi by stating that they do not use weapons, they only use the bodies given to them by God, making them different from the Shoshidai. Kagetsu counters that not everyone can be like Lady Himiko, but Kazuma insists that is why they endure harsh training every day. He argues that weapons are made to kill men, so those who wield them are damned. Meanwhile, Seiya praises Guy for the meat he prepared. However, he notices there are no chives and asks Guy to go buy some. Guy refuses, leading to a little argument. Guy questions Seiya about why he joined the Shoshidai if he doesn't like it there, and Seiya replies that he joined to survive. He explains that they will someday become Busoma and that going into cold sleep at the Shoshidai can delay that transformation. Guy then asks why Seiya fears becoming a Busoma. Seiya explains that as a Busoma, you cease to be yourself, which is a natural fear. Guy doesn't understand why he fears losing himself, and Seiya reminds him that's why he's weak. Seiya recounts a mission he had with his comrades. During the mission, a grenade was thrown at them, severely wounding them. As Seiya lay dying with more enemies approaching, he saw a light ring that asked him to take its hand if he wanted to survive. He did, and it immediately possessed him, urging him to kill everyone if he wished to live. Seiya killed the enemies and nearly killed his comrades too, but a picture fell from his pocket. It was a picture of him and Kei, and the memories helped him regain control of himself. Seiya advises Guy not to let the weapon use him. He says he should wield it for the one he loves and wishes to protect. However, he adds that Guy lacks that motivation, which makes him weak. He then once again asks Guy to go get the chives. Sayaka's friends are enjoying themselves, but she's absent-minded. Meanwhile, Tokumitsu is driving Shin home when Shin notices a girl asking passersby to sign a petition. Curious, he asks what the petition is about. Sayaka and her friends are done and part ways. As Sayaka walks along, Shin suddenly approaches her, asking if she would sign the petition. It's a campaign against the construction of a condo building in Izumi Park. Sayaka signs it and continues on her way. Shortly after, she encounters two boys who ask her to hang out. She tries to ignore them, but they persist and start becoming aggressive. Shin steps in, urging them to stop and instead sign the petition. This angers one of the boys, who punches Shin in the gut. Upset, Shin declares that violence is the dumbest act in the world. It solves nothing and only leads to more violence. The boy shuts him up by punching him again. Shin regains consciousness, finding himself lying by the roadside with Sayaka beside him. She apologizes for the situation, but Shin assures her it's not her fault. The boys walk away, thinking about weird Shin. As they go, they spot Midoriko and continue their perversion. They approach her, asking to have some fun. Midoriko accepts their invitation and begins to lift her blouse. They get excited, but she pulls out a sword and slashes one of them. Guy is on his way to buy chives. Shin and Sayaka see one of the boys running back in horror, asking for help. However, Midoriko catches up to him and finishes him off. She wants to attack Shin and Sayaka as well, but is interrupted by Guy, who steps in to stop her. Shin recognizes the Shiru. Meanwhile, Seiya is waiting for Guy, wondering where he went shopping. He turns around and sees Miora, who informs him of its new identity as Zisulkiwin. Seiya is surprised to see Miora as Zisulkiwin and acknowledges that Miora has done a lot for him. To repay him, Seiya vows to give Miora a peaceful rest at his own hand. Miora replies that Seiya will soon find peace as well before disappearing. At that moment, Seiya gets closer to becoming a Busoma. Shin hears the voice of Shiru and asks who Guy is. Before Guy can answer, Midoriko declares herself the heroine and attacks Guy again. She thinks she has seen him before, but brushes it off and says she'll kill him, calling herself the strongest. Gay's hand transforms and he effortlessly dodges her attacks and then strikes her. Midoriko realizes that he's leveled up and runs away. Sayaka is worried when she sees Gay's wound. He says it's nothing. She tries to take him home, but he refuses, saying he's got nowhere to go home to. He asks her to stay away, that he's fine being alone. Sayaka is sad. The next day in school, Sayaka is absent-minded until the teacher announces there's a new student. It's Shin. At Shoshidai, Mina is undergoing a procedure where a mask is created to change her appearance to resemble Erika. Kiyoka informs her that she has been reborn as Aya Tagaki and will be in charge of Marcus. Marcus is released from cold sleep and taken for examination. They find no issues with the core Alma and are amazed by the healing power of the chrysalises. After Marcus gets dressed, he meets Aya. He mistakes her for Erika and questions what she is doing there, but Aya corrects him, explaining that she is his counselor, Aya. Marcus is surprised and apologizes for the confusion. Aya takes a seat and begins the session. She asks to confirm that he has only gone through one battle so far, to which Marcus agrees, adding that he may not be cut out for fighting. Aya reassures him that everyone feels that way at first and asks if he is afraid. He admits that he is scared and still can't believe what happened to Mickey. He then asks if Mickey is in cold sleep, and Aya confirms this. Marcus expresses that he feels alone without Mickey, but Aya assures him that he now has her as support and can talk to her about anything. Marcus fears that he will someday become a Busoma, but Aya reassures him that Shoshidai will do everything possible to help prevent that from happening. Despite this, Marcus remains uncertain since there is no cure yet and begins to panic. In an effort to comfort him, Aya places his head against her chest, promising to do what she can to protect him. This action reminds Marcus of a moment he had in the hospital after learning about his legs when Erika comforted him in a similar way. He mutters her name, and Aya immediately lets him go, feeling it has become awkward. He apologizes, but she tells him he can call her Erika and holds his hands. Seiya and Gay are back on the road, heading for the Shoshidai. Seiya explains to Gay what the Shoshidai is. He likens the chrysalises to patients suffering from an incurable disease. No medicine can stop it, and ultimately, you don't just die, the weapon's instincts take over, and you lose yourself. He describes Busoma as pathetic monsters, emphasizing that one becomes a weapon. Just like his chakram or Gai Shiryu, there are many weapons in the world known as Saga Alma that can possess humans. Gai Shiryu is a rare case, having externally crystallized. The Shoshidai exists to gather and preserve all the Sage Alma in the world. It is a facility where people like them, those possessed by Sage Alma or chrysalises, are isolated and researched before they are fully corrupted. Chrysalises arriving at the Shoshidai are put into cold sleep. While they sleep, the organization works on developing a medicine for them. In class, Shin writes a sentence in English on the board and reads it aloud, impressing everyone. After class, his classmates gather around him with questions. Shin explains that while he hasn't lived outside of Japan, he often traveled with his father for work. He adds that his job is charity work, which fascinates the students. Well, except for these guys. After finishing a meeting in the faculty room, Shin is on his way back to class when he sees the boys in the hallway. War. He tries to ignore them, but one of the boys trips him and makes a joke about English. Noroma then snatches Shin's wallet and mocks him about his job, asking him to donate to them. Just then, Sayaka grabs the wallet from Noruma and starts yelling for the teacher. Other students gather, and Noruma and his friends leave, claiming they were just joking. Sayaka returns the wallet to Shin and he thanks her. He didn't realize she attended this school, to which she responds that they're in the same class. They sit outside and continue their conversation. Shin then asks about Guy, and Sayaka explains that Guy is like a little brother to her. She also shares Guy's name with Shin. Meanwhile, Kyoka scolds Seiya for not returning earlier. He tries to brush it off lightly, but she isn't playing along. Seiya explains that he completed his mission and brought Guy as ordered. Kyoka reminds him that he can't act on his own whims and then approaches Guy, introducing herself as the administrator of Shoshidai Branch 3. Seiya informs her that Guy's core alma is the Shiryu. Kuoka thanks Guy for coming and welcomes him on behalf of Shoshidai. Kuoka orders Seiya to report for cold sleep immediately, but he refuses. She tells him that his Maldician readings are at their limit, and any additional combat could accelerate his transformation into a Busoma. Seiya still refuses, insisting that he has work to finish. He mentions that he met Miora, which surprises Kyoka. Seiya continues, recalling that he remembers Kyoka now. She is Miora's daughter. He once followed Miora home and saw his daughter from the car. Seiya assures Kyoka that he can handle Miora since they have worked on many jobs together. He believes it's the least he can do to repay him. He states that Kyoka wants the same thing, to save her father's soul. Seiya asks for permission to fight Miora. No, Sokyuin. Kyoka replies that she cannot make that decision on her own and needs to inform her superiors. Do not think Seiya can do it, reminding Kyoka of the many chrysalises that have fallen to Zeisoldgyuin. Kyoka tries to insist, but they stop her. They claim that the anti-Basoma weapon they've been developing has been completed and they intend to use it on Zeisoldgyuin. Kyoka then asks about Prismaphon, a new drug that can turn Basoma back into humans. However, they respond that even if it were ready, they do not plan to use it on Miora, as he is a stain on the history of the Shoshidai. Seiya shows Guy the weapons gathered from searches around the world. Guy asks Seiya if he will eventually become a Basoma as well, to which Seiya replies that he probably will at some point. He explains that only a chrysalis can defeat a Basoma, and to unleash a weapon's full power and win the battle, one must synchronize with the core alma within them. The longer someone stays synchronized, the closer they come to becoming a Busoma, which are cursed weapons that long for blood and battle. He suspects that Guy wants to become a Busoma, but Guy does not deny it. Seiya reminds him that by doing so, he will cease to be himself and will lose his human heart. As they leave, they meet Marcus and Aya in the hallway. Marcus thanks them for their previous help and welcomes Guy, saying that everyone is so nice and that it's wonderful there. Aya then calls for Marcus to join her for his next examination, so he says goodbye and leaves with her. Guy wonders if the Shoshidai is truly that great. Meanwhile, Sayaka wants to join her friends at the club since it has been a while. When her friend is surprised, Sayaka explains that there is nothing waiting for her at home. Meanwhile, Shin was watching them. The girls are drawing, then the teacher announces that Shin will join the club and everyone seems excited. Shin starts drawing but notices Sayaka behind the flower they are supposed to draw, so he decides to draw her instead. Miora arrives at Shoshidai, setting off an alarm, and special forces units are deployed. In a single strike, Zeisoldgyuin eliminates them all. Heavy infantry arrive, and Miura attempts to destroy them, but his attack is redirected, and they all swarm him at once. The staff are confused about the signal, unsure if it signifies a Busoma or a chrysalis. Kyoka clarifies that it is neither. She wonders if these are the anti-Basoma weapons developed by headquarters. Seiya and Guy approach her, and Seiya asks if she received permission, but she does not answer. Instead, she watches the fight unfold. Seeing her father reminds her of the times they played piano together, but now he is Zoldgyuin. Miora defeats the weapons. Finally, Kyoka responds to Seiya, recalling her father's words about him. He mentioned that Seiya is a slacker but can be trusted. Keiyoka decides to leave her father to him. Angry, Seiya wants to bring Gei along, claiming he needs an assistant, and Keiyoka agrees. They rush off together. Keiyoka reflects on the last time she saw her father. He was leaving for another business trip, and she felt she might never see him again. She watches as he takes down the remaining weapons. Seiya and Gei reach the scene of the battle. Seiya tries to remind Miora of the sake they shared, but Soltuin asserts that Miora is no longer present in that body. Seiya continues, stating that they'll drink together again in hell. Seiya synchronizes with his sage Alma, and they charge, ready for battle. Seiya and Miora prepare to fight each other. Before the battle begins, Seiya reminds Guy of a promise they made. He had told Guy that he would soon become a Busoma and made Guy promise to defeat him if that ever happened. Seiya then asks Miora what drew him to his weapon, noting that darkness lurked in Miora's heart. He asks what fear drove Miora to seek power. In response, Miora launches an attack. Seiya retaliates, but Miora effortlessly destroys Seiya's attack. Miora's stance triggers a memory for Seiya. Administrator Miora had asked to see Seiya. He was practicing with the sword. Miora questioned Seiya about whether he feared losing himself to his weapon. Seiya confidently replied that it wouldn't happen anytime soon, as he believed his mind was strong enough. Miora wanted to press the issue, but was interrupted by Seiya, who said Miora could just finish him off when that happened. Miora agreed to do that. As Seiya was leaving, Miora stopped him and asked if Seiya would intervene if he ever ceased to be himself. Seiya didn't take the question seriously, but jokingly responded that he'd punch Miora really hard if that happened. Back to the present. Seiya attacks Miora, and they resume fighting while Keiyoka watches, silently pleading for Seiya to save her father. After the club, Shin catches up with Sayaka as she is leaving. He hands her the picture he drew of her, and she thanks him. As he watches her walk away, Tokumitsu calls out to him. Shin wonders how long Tokumitsu has been standing there, and Tokumitsu remarks that he notices Shin has been busy since his transfer, but Shin quickly denies it. Meanwhile, Seiya and Miora continue their fight. Seiya manages to capture Miora and is about to finish him when he suddenly feels weak as he gets closer to transforming. This causes Miora to break free and attack Seiya. Miora believes it's over and commends Seiya for being the first to push him that hard, despite being just a chrysalis. Miora then transforms into his Busoma form and challenges Seiya to break his chrysalis shell and fight. Seiya refuses, so Miora wants to kill him, but Guy intervenes. He says Seiya can't do it alone anymore. Guy attacks Miora, and they engage in battle while Grims watches from afar. Seiya believes he has only one chance to hit Miora. Gei is holding his ground against Miora, and just when Miora raises his sword to strike again, Seiya attacks with light rings and Gei strikes. Miora seems hurt, and it looks like they could win. Seiya summons a large light ring and throws it at Miora while Guy goes to attack. However, Gei's attack is stopped by Grims. Gei wonders if he's allies with Miora. He wants to strike again, but Seiya stops him. Grims tells Soltuin that it would be a shame to lose his rage and anger now. He insists it is not yet time, but Soltuin responds that he doesn't need Grims' help and leaves. Grims then turns his attention to Seiya and Guy. Guy feels the murderous aura. It's on a whole different level than the other Busoma. Meanwhile, Kazuma returns to Gabi and asks to see Lady Himiko. He finds her by the waterfall and informs her that Sion is indeed dead. Kazuma thinks there's no need for Himiko to train at the waterfall anymore. She says he's weak, so he can't feel the aura of battle rising in a far distance. She adds that it's no ordinary matter. She explains that she was purifying herself so the evil aura did not taint her, and instructs Kazuma to focus on his mind. Sayaka returns home and opens the picture. She realizes that she looks sad. She's been looking that way ever since Guy vanished. She wonders if they'll ever see each other again. Saya recognizes Grims the Reaper, who is the original Busoma and said to be the master of them all. Grims mentions that he has witnessed how Guy fights and praises him for performing well, considering he is merely a chrysalis. Kyoka, communicating through an earpiece, urges Seiya to get out of there. Seiya wants to, but he doesn't have the strength to do so. He asks Guy to leave it to him and run. Grims is impressed that Seiya would continue to fight despite witnessing Grims' power. He declares that the age of foolish humanity will soon come to an end, and the age of Busoma is about to begin. He says that Guy, too, will shed his human form and become a builder of the new world, insisting that now is the time for them to be reborn as Busoma. Guy has had enough and charges at Grims, while Seiya is disappointed that they have to fight again. Shin attends the Foundation's anniversary party as the head of the philanthropy division. Meanwhile, Sayaka sits alone at home, recalling Guy saying he's fine with being alone. She wonders why he said that and hugs their picture, wishing for his safe return. During the party, Shin delivers a speech about their philanthropy and their commitment to fighting violence. expressing his belief that human nature is kindness, not violence. Back in battle, Guy and Seiya continue to face off against Grimm's, who has the upper hand. Seiya suggests they repeat their previous tactic. He will create an opening for Guy. However, Guy is too consumed by rage to listen and goes back to fight. Seiya sees that at this rate, Guy will transform. Grimm's continues handing them their asses. He realizes Seiya is out of power and strikes him repeatedly until Guy intervenes. Grimm's chuckles as he sees that Guy is losing himself. Guy charges at Grimm's once more, but Seiya stops him, trying to bring him back to his senses. Gay, however, insists that Seiya move aside. Grimm's is enjoying the show and says the battle will not end until they're both reborn. He attacks them again, but Gay defends. Grimm's encourages Gay to leave his cocoon and become a butterfly. Meanwhile, the Shiryu asks for more blood. Sayaka fell asleep. She wakes up and finds their picture broken. She's immediately worried about Guy. Guy is transforming into a Busoma while Seiya is still trying to stop him. Grimm's calls them fools for denying their destiny and struggling against it. Seiya knows he can't hold Guy much longer. Guy breaks free and fully transforms into a Busoma, then stabs Seiya, who falls to the ground. He says farewell to Guy and to himself, before also transforming into a Busoma. Himiko senses that another sad soul has fallen into darkness. Guy returns to his human form, collapsing to the ground and passing out. However, Seiya still stands. Kyoka watches as Seiya's chakram and grins while Guy is passed out cold. The fighting continues, creating a huge impact, and Arnie simply observes. The following morning, Shoshidai loses track of chakram and Grimm's signals, and Kyoka gives an order to retrieve Guy. She decides to forget about her father in the meantime. At the Ogata house, Sayaka offers prayers to Guy's mother, asking her to watch over Guy and help him return home someday. Guy is undergoing an MRI at Shoshidai when suspicious results appear in his blood test. When he wakes up, Kyoka informs him that they rescued him. Guy inquires about Seiya, only to learn that he is banished. Guy insists on searching for Seiya because he promised to defeat him if he became a Busoma. Kyoka explains that it's impossible to defeat Seiya now that he's a Busoma. She reveals that the maldition levels in Guy's blood are dangerously high, meaning he could transform at any moment, and that it is a miracle that he is still himself. They decide to place him in cold sleep. Guy protests, saying that Seiya is calling out to him, but Kyoka refuses and releases gas into the room, causing Guy to pass out. He is then put into cold sleep. At school, Sayaka sees Shin drawing and asks if he's going home. Shin wants to sketch a bit more, but before Sayaka leaves, he inquires if her family does anything related to swords. He mentions that during the attack, he sensed a familiar scent similar to a sword he has at home. Sayaka becomes sad remembering Guy. She tells Shin about Guy working as an apprentice for her father to become a swordsmith before leaving. Meanwhile, Seiya activates chakram, destroying buildings. Shoshidai receives a signal and decides to deploy Chrysalis, but their request is denied. However, Guy has somehow managed to escape. In the city, people run for their lives as Guy looks for Seiya. When Kyoka confronts her superiors, they inform her that they have awakened Guy from his cold sleep. She worries that he might transform, but that's their aim. To them, only another Busoma can stop Seiya. They instruct her to track Guy instead of complaining. Guy eventually spots Seiya in a building and goes up to him, telling him that he heard Seiya's call and has come to fulfill his promise. Seiya transforms into chakram and attacks Guy, who defends himself. With another attack, Guy falls through and is in pain. As chakram approaches him, Shiryu takes over, whispering for Guy to spill human liquid. Guy struggles to maintain control, but another attack from chakram destabilizes him, causing Guy to transform into Busoma. Shoshidai finally tracks Guy down, and Kyoka is shocked by what he has become. A fierce battle ensues between Shiryu and Chakram, so powerful that Himiko in her temple feels the intensity of their clash. She admits to never having witnessed a Busoma battle quite like this. As Shiryu falls, Chakram confidently approaches, attempting to deliver a finishing blow, but Shiryu blocks the strike and pierces Chakram, reducing it to atoms. In the subconscious, Guy sees Seiya, who gently pats his head and apologizes for making Guy end him. Seiya tells Guy to go home before walking away. Guy reaches out to Seiya as he vanishes and begins sobbing. He notices a bright light and hears a woman's voice urging him to return home. When Guy reverts to his human form, he finds his way home. Sayaka is doing chores when she hears Guy enter. She rushes to support him as he faints. When Guy wakes up, he finds himself surrounded by Sayaka, Ogawa, and Amon, who joyfully welcome him back. After he recovers, Guy contemplates why he returned. From his reflection, he can see Shiru, who is still urging him to hurt someone. Sayaka sees Guy leaving and follows him to the cave. She questions what is wrong, and Guy says he's weak. He tells her how he has to live his life like a sword. He tells her his fears of the dark and regrets. Sayaka hugs him, trying to encourage and comfort him. Guy puts a sword through her, but it's all in his head. And when he snaps out of it, he tells Sayaka they should go home before the rain gets heavier. The next morning, Gabe visits his mother's grave. He realizes they're just the same, as she was only trying to protect what she cared about. Sayaka joins him at the grave to thank his mother for bringing him back. As they walk home, Guy feels an urge to harm Sayaka, but manages to suppress it. Later, he decides to forge a sword for the first time. Once completed, he shows it to Eamon, who praises his work. Eamon inquires about Guy's experiences in the real world, to which Guy responds that he has learned about true strength. Eamon knows his teacher was Seiya. Gabe gives the sword to Sayaka for protection. She thanks him and promises to cherish it. They spend some time with each other, then one night, Gabe quietly leaves the house, but Sayaka sees him and follows. At the top of a building, he disconnects the Shiryu arm from himself and falls, right in front of Sayaka, who is still searching for him. Sayaka is in shock and passes out. A helicopter is seen in the clouds as Marcus heads to retrieve the Pyramid Dao. He jumps out, landing in the facility. Stealthily, he takes out one guard but is soon caught and shots are fired at him. Marcus summons his Azoth sword and, with Beelzebub's help, envelops the guards in darkness, making them unable to move. He interrogates one guard about the Pyramid Dao, who reveals that the captain has it. Marcus puts the guards to sleep and locates the captain, but it is too late as the sword has already possessed him. With Beelzebub's help, he easily defeats the captain and retrieves the sword. On his way back, he calls Kyoka, who tells him to get examined once he turns in the Pyramid Dao. If everything checks out, he can take a 24-hour break before re-entering cold sleep. Marcus points out that he has been working for 144 hours, 72 hours of real work, and another 72 hours in cold sleep. To him, cold sleep as a chrysalis is a form of labor and raises concerns about the seriously poor working conditions as Shoshidai. When Kyoka seems confused, he brushes it off as a joke and requests an extended break. Kyoka promises to consider it. After the call, she comments on how Marcus has changed, likely because he is settling into the job. Marcus then calls his girlfriend Aya to inform her about his break. Meanwhile, at a hospital, Shin's sister Rie is crying because the treatment they usually receive is painful. Shuko and Sayori try to comfort her. Shoko wonders when they will be able to leave the hospital and fears they might stay there forever. Sayori scolds her for thinking that way and asks what she'll do once they are discharged. Together, they decide to have a barbecue on a tropical island. However, Rie prefers to stay with her brother Shin rather than join them. Sayori encourages her by saying she will see Shin on visiting day. The doctor, Kagatsuka, comes in to inform Ria that it is time for her exam, but she protests, not wanting to go. He insists that she has to get better and must endure the treatments. When Rie remains silent, he promises to take her to a place she will enjoy on the next field trip. Reluctantly, Rie agrees. Strapped to a table, Rie screams in pain as a series of needles are inserted into her. Meanwhile, Marcus and Aya are enjoying their time on a yacht. Marcus shares that his only option is to live at the Shoshidai and work hard, impressing Aya. Marcus realizes how much he likes her and proposes. Aya agrees, and they begin making out. She suggests they have a long kiss worthy of a Guinness record, which rings a bell for Marcus, but he brushes it off, and they continue. Back at Shoshidai, Koyuka discusses Marcus with a doctor. He explains that Marcus's maldition values in his blood are unusually low for a chrysalis, and based on the tests, there is no indication that he will transform into a Busuma anytime soon. He suspects that the results are too good given that he has completed a number of missions in the past month, but there is no change in his maldition values. Keoka notes that the time it takes for a chrysalis to become a Busuma varies, and they still do not fully understand the mechanism behind it. She assumes that Marcus might have a longer moratorium. The doctor mentions that he would have thought the same, except that Marcus's core is the Azoth sword. This implies that the Azoth sword is not a typical Sage Alma, as it contains the demon Beelzebub, unlike others. On the yacht, Marcus continues to talk about the wedding, but suddenly remembers overhearing Mickey's girlfriend reference a Guinness record. Aya notices the shift in his mood, and he asks if she knows Mickey's girlfriend, Mina. She replies that Mina has been transferred to headquarters and suggests they head inside, as it's chilly. Marcus catches a glimpse of Mina in Aya, but gaslights himself that he is mistaken. Meanwhile, Sayaka's teacher asks her to read a passage, but remembers she cannot speak anymore, and apologizes. Sayaka spends time with her friends, and Shin understands what Sayaka wants to say and tells the others. One friend accidentally spills a drink on Sayaka and takes her to the bathroom while Shin wants to follow but is stopped by the other girls. They marvel at Shin's ability to understand Sayaka and attribute it to the power of love, although he denies it. The girls wonder what happened to Sayaka. She was absent for 3 months, and when she came back, she couldn't talk. The other girl says she heard something bad happen to one of Sayaka's relatives. They don't know much about it, but they're relieved that she is smiling more upon her return. Shin, however, breaks it to them that Sayaka is merely pretending and is actually fighting deep sadness. At Shoshidai, Aya informs Kyoka about Marcus's marriage proposal. Kyoka praises her for doing a good job on Marcus and gives her approval for the marriage, saying that it will be just on paper and that Marcus will go right back into cold sleep, and this time, possibly for a really long period. Kyoka expresses her wish for Aya to supervise the next chrysalis if that happens. Meanwhile, Marcus is checking the records since he is suspicious of Aya. He discovers that Mina's name is not listed at headquarters, making him ask Beelzebub to find Aya. Kyoka tells Aya that a new chrysalis has just arrived, but Aya is not having it. She refuses. At that moment, Beelzebub arrives and overhears Aya admitting that she changed her appearance from Mina's to her current one. Aya, Marcus can hear their conversation. Kyoka tells Aya that it's thanks to her that both Miki and Marcus are happy, even if their love was false. She recognizes Aya's noble job, stating that because of her, Miki didn't die alone. This news shocks Marcus, who is just learning for the first time that Mickey is dead. He watches a video showing how Mickey was ended while in cold sleep. Feeling betrayed, Marcus is heartbroken and starts to cry before suddenly bursting into a maniacal laugh. Aya goes to the locker room to change and is startled to see Marcus's reflection in the mirror. He confronts her with the information he has gathered, but she initially denies it. Eventually, when he doesn't back down, she admits the truth but insists that she genuinely loves him. Marcus pretends to believe her, and when she kisses him, he drives a cold blade through her. As she falls, apologizing, Beelzebub takes over and transforms Marcus into a basoma. Believing that this isn't her real face, he tears the skin from her face. Kyoka receives reports that Marcus has transformed. She initiates a lockdown and orders everyone to end Marcus, but he effortlessly breaks through the doors, using his beloved Aya as a human shield. The guards are disgusted by how Aya now looks and retreat. Azoth is now in a full rage mode. In art class, when Sayaka uses red paint, she has flashbacks of her trauma and leaves, ignoring Shin. Meanwhile, Azoth has eliminated all the guards and is pleased with himself. Kyoka releases some chrysalis to pursue Busoma Azoth. Shin prays that Sayaka will soon be able to speak again and regain her true smile. When he arrives at school, he spots Sayaka and they walk to class together. Throughout the lesson, he keeps stealing glances at her and he is worried about her. Kyoka gives a pep talk to the three chrysalis about their mission to locate and destroy Azoth. She introduces them to each other for good team spirit or whatever. Issei, whose core Alma is Nibastigma, comments on how poorly Kyoka takes care of her hair and tells her to eat some vegetables or risk going bald. I'll definitely take hair advice from this dude. I mean, look at his hair. Sayaka continues feeding them with information about Azoth. She warns Issei to be careful as she doesn't want him to die on his first job. While they fly to their destination, one of the chrysalis asks Issei why he joined Shoshidai. This question triggers flashbacks of being hunted by Yasuko, who seems to be everywhere he goes. One time she waited for him in bed, and when he finally stood up to her, she declared her love for him, but bro is just disgusted. The memories haunt him, and he can't share them with his team, fearing they will mock him for joining Shoshidai to protect his chastity. Meanwhile, a student accidentally bumps into Sayaka, knocking her books to the ground. Shin rushes to help her pick them up. After she thanks him, he notices her sadness and suggests they skip school since the weather is nice. They ditch class and enjoy some fun activities together. At the hospital, Shuko complains about the next exams while Ri has flashbacks about her last test and expresses her desire to leave the hospital. Shuko grumbles about being stuck inside for all but one day each month, so Yori reminds them that these are the rules, but eventually the girls decide to attempt an escape. They try to unlock the first door they come across but are unsuccessful, so they set off to find another exit. Meanwhile, Shin and Sayaka are still on their little date. When Shin tries to find their next location on the map, the tall building Sayaka sees triggers her trauma and she finds a pole to support her. The chrysalis released to find Azoth make their way through a tunnel where they encounter Yasuko, who summons her Gallon Hammer, ready to fight the Shoshidai chrysalis. Just then, Issei stumbles in looking exhausted. Yasuko calls out out to him, acting all lovey-dovey, but Issei runs for his life. Yasuko then has to fend off the other chrysalids that try to interfere with her romance. She releases poison that destabilizes the poor guys and is about to leave, but this time it's Azoth that hinders her. She calls him ugly and releases more toxic air, but the poison doesn't work on Azoth as he's still able to move and yeets the other chrysalid out of existence. Still fleeing, Issei informs Kyuika about his comrade's dire situation. She orders him to return to Shoshidai immediately until they can come up with a new plan. At Gabi Temple, Himiko decides to eliminate some negative energy. Back at the hospital, the kids are still searching for an escape route, but all the doors they've encountered are locked. They realize the hospital is a bit sus, seeing as it lacks windows or stairs. They find another locked door and, determined to leave, try harder to open it. Eventually, it gives way, but they discover it's a dead end. Suddenly, they are knocked out by Kagetsuka, who must erase their memories once again. In the evening, Shin and Sayaka sit down to talk. He tells her he knows she forces herself to smile and be happy, asking her about her trauma. He opens up about his own struggles, sharing how his village was attacked and he witnessed his mother being killed before his eyes. Although he survived, his sister had to stay in the hospital due to the after effects. Sayaka watches him passionately. His story reminds her of Guy, both of them trying to escape from their darkness. He is scared the darkness would swallow him. Overwhelmed by memories of Guy's fall, Sayaka suddenly lets out a scream and hugs Shin tightly. Her voice returns because of her intense desire to let Shin know she will protect him. They lock lips in the sunset. Meanwhile, the sacrifice Kazuma offered to the twin Shiryu is insufficient to satisfy it. It craves more. The next day, Shin visits Rai, who is overjoyed to see him. A Basoma sneaks up on Himiko, but she is aware of its presence. She declares that she is avenging Soin and threatens to save the Basoma's soul if it tries to fight her. The Basoma slowly retreats. Ri tells Shin how she misses him and how tough it is being able to see each other once a week. He asks her what she did that day, but she has gaps in her memory. Ri informs him that the doctor said she is doing well and will be going home soon. Shin encourages her to endure for the time being and promises to celebrate with her once she is released. Meanwhile, Azoth unalives a woman in an alley, feeling itchy. Afterward, he returns to his human form, having taken the woman's ring in hopes of giving it to Aya. Kagetsuka takes Rai out for a nice time, and they have a brief conversation about how much Shin loves her. He then suggests they get ice cream. As Rai follows him, she questions their destination, and Kagetsuka tells her he'll give her something better than ice cream. He takes the bracelet off her wrist as she is possessed. Azoth is still on the run, and Kyoka requests permission to send more chrysali, but her superiors instruct her only to supervise, insisting it is for the greater good, and dismiss her. Kyoka returns to her office and has a drink while reminiscing about her father, Miora. She soon goes back to work and instructs her team to monitor Azoth, who is currently at a park. He mistakes a random stranger for Aya and asks her to marry him, but she escapes in panic. Marcus is really different from what Shoshidai has ever seen, as fragments of his memories as a human are still there. One of the staff suggests sending Chrysalis to eliminate Azoth before the situation escalates further, but Kyoka knows this won't be approved and tells them to continue observing. Shin and Sayaka are also at the park. Shin feels awkward and is talking a lot, while Sayaka remains calm. He's relieved that their conversation feels natural and Sayaka won't notice he stayed up all night. Shin wonders why Sayaka hasn't said anything about their kiss, and he, embarrassed, hugs a tree. Surprised, Sayaka asks if he's okay, and he responds that he's appreciating nature. Meanwhile, two girls who worked at the place where Ri and Kagetsuka were find several bodies and are horrified. Rai confides in Kagetsuka that she doesn't want to return to the hospital, but he refuses to agree, causing her to run away. Sayaka notices Shin acting weird and questions him about it. He is about to ask if they're dating when he sees his sister run past. Shin chases after her, and eventually, Rai runs into Marcus. He asks her to marry him, and Rai agrees on the condition that Shin must be present as well. Marcus consents. While this occurs, Shin continues searching for Rai, and a passerby points him in the right direction. Himiko is still on her mission, which she senses a Basoma and exposes it. The Basoma attacks her, but she seizes its core Alma and puts the weapon inside her. While the Basoma fades, a new assistant, Sako, is introduced to Kazuma, who informs Sako about an important job he has for him. Marcus brings Ria to a church and asks the priest to marry them. The priest attempts to refuse, but Marcus is very persuasive. Sako finds himself bound to a table and blindfolded. Kazuma unsheathes Shiryu and stabs Sako. Sako, in pain and bleeding from his eye, suddenly breaks free and walks out, cutting down the door in his path. Meanwhile, the clergyman begins the marriage ceremony, but Ri refuses to proceed unless her brother is present. This upsets Marcus, who transforms into Azoth and eliminates the clergy. He is about to strike Rie when Shin suddenly bursts in to save her. He takes a blow meant for her and is thrown aside by the impact. Azoth approaches Rai, confessing expressing his love, while Shin calls out to him to stop, determined to defend Rai. Shin is tossed away again, and Azoth picks up Rai, preparing to strike her. Just then, Saku arrives wielding Shiryu and the Busoma. Shiryu asks Shin to become its sheath, stating that it is both their destiny. Once Shin takes the sword, he becomes possessed, and Saku passes away. Now wielding the power of Shiryu, Shin is ready to defend Ri against Azoth, who tosses her aside. They engage in combat, and Shin has the upper hand. He defeats Azoth, who transforms back into Marcus before vanishing. Shin then passes out, and Ri's eyes change. Hamiko returns to the temple, welcomed by Kazumo. She inquires about the man they rescued and is informed that he has begun a new kind of training. Meanwhile, Guy sits in front of the flames, meditating. He enters a shop and cries his eyes out. The armor behind him creaks, dragging his attention. He sees an eye and becomes scared. At Gabi Temple, Himiko asks Guy how life has been for him. She gives him a present, a new arm. Guy tries it on. It fits perfectly. Kazumo notices that Guy has never uttered a word of thanks to them, even after they saved him, but Guy replies that he never asked for their help. Kazumo is frustrated, but Himiko tells him to remain calm. Himiko explains to Guy that they have been fighting the Busoma for years, and he is the first to become a Busoma and then cut off his weapon. She warns him that the demon within him has yet to disappear and advises him never to try to end his own life again. She explains that even if his body is destroyed, his soul will not be saved. If he wishes to be free, he should live as though he were already dead, and the demon inside him would eventually disappear. A man arrives to inform Himiko and Kazumo that preparations for the match are complete. Himiko invites Guy to watch the Hollow Kempo they practice. On the training ground, two men are fighting, but their attacks always end in a tie. Guy finds this strange. Kazumo tells him that tying is the path to Hollow Kempo's greatest techniques, which focus on becoming one with your opponent. To achieve this, one must reach a state of emptiness. Kazumo informs Guy that Himiko is the second person in Gabi's 300-year history to master this technique. When she was 9, her father, the previous clan leader, recognized that she had become enlightened and gave her the jewels that signify leadership within the clan. Himiko has reached a state of emptiness and has become a holy being. Himiko decides to join the two men in training, but she is no match for them. Kazumo tells Guy that there are 21 different cursed weapons within Himiko, all taken from the Busoma she has defeated. She serves as a sheath for the weapons, and to be a sheath, one must be hollow. When the men attack her again, she removes their energy cores, leaving them weak. Eventually, she returns the cores to them and asks Guy if he is willing to begin another type of training, becoming hollow. Meanwhile, Kuromaru's mother urges him to go play with his friends instead of sitting at home. He returns to the shop and asks the armor to be his friend and allow him inside. Himiko takes Guy to the Hall of Hell to test his karma. The flames light up around Guy as he stands in their midst. Himiko tells him he needs to leave the circle, but when he attempts to do so, the flames grow hotter and he sees Mickey within them. Himiko explains that the flames react to his karma. The darker his karma, the brighter the flames burn. Guy also catches a glimpse of Seiya and is reminded of the imaginary scenario where he stabbed Sayaka. All his regrets come rushing back, fueling Shiryu's bloodlust. Unable to control himself any longer, the flames burn even brighter, prompting Himiko to jump in and save him. She extracts his core and places it within herself to suppress the flames. As Guy rests, Kazumo warns Himiko that, based on the evil flames they just witnessed, if they allow Guy to remain, he will bring disaster upon them. Himiko dismisses his concerns, insisting that what Guy fights for is the salvation of others, and that those burdened like Guy are the ones they must help. Meanwhile, Kuromaru is once again being bullied. This time, he manages to escape, but his bullies chase after him. Kuromaru finds his way back to the shop and desperately begs the armor to let him in. The armor obliges and opens up, revealing a collection of blades. Oh, Kuromaru becomes possessed. The bullies come looking for him, but when they see a Busoma, they become scared and run away. Meanwhile, Midoriko watches from the top of a building. She is approached by Grims, who hypnotizes her to serve him. Guy and Himiko discuss the previous day, during which she tells him that he is the first to create such flames. She then asks why he tried to end his life. Guy explains everything and tells her he doesn't want to hurt people anymore. He asks Himiko how he can become hollow like her. She laughs lightly and explains that she is like a grave for weapons. She shows him the energy she took from him and says that if he can tame the raging energy, he will be able to harness that power. The energy bursts and its particles cause flowers to bloom. Guy tells her she is not a grave because when she passed through his body the previous day, he felt the warmth of her heartbeat. Kazumo watches them. As Himiko is returning, Kazumo warns her not to fall in love with Guy, as as emotions would prevent her from remaining hollow. Himiko reassures him not to worry. Kuromaru, now a Busoma, is confronted by Midoriko. RE! She transforms into Flamberge and fights Kuromaru, who is only defending himself. He calls out for help, and Himiko hears him, sending a Firebird to aid him. Kuromaru tries to escape from Flamberge, but she is determined to defeat him. She strikes him away and suddenly feels another presence. It is El Geshosu. He fires at her while leaping onto the building she occupies. Once he lands, he transforms into a Busoma and they begin to battle. Grims, watching from afar, anticipated Geshosu's arrival and refers to him as the Mad Busoma, a demon who only seeks to fight. While their battle continues, the Firebird arrives, and through it, Himiko instructs Kuromaru to follow the bird and find her. He complies. Meanwhile, Geshosu ultimately defeats Flamberge, shooting her down. Kazumo then challenges Guy to a fight, believing that Guy could bring disaster to Himiko and the Gabi. However, Guy is reluctant to engage in battle. When Kazumo demands that Guy either fight him or leave and never return, Guy expresses that he still has much to learn from Gabi. Kazumo attacks Guy, who defends himself but ends up taking the fall. Guy is determined not to fight or hurt anyone anymore. At that moment, the Firebird arrives with Kuromaru. Kazumo instinctively prepares to attack Kuromaru, seeing him as a Busoma, but Guy steps in to protect him. Kuromaru then transforms back into a human and collapses. The Firebird returns to Himiko. Shin wakes up in a hospital. He doesn't remember much before having flashbacks of his encounter with the sword. As he panics and struggles against the urge from the sword to kill, his father, Matoba, and Kyoko walk in. Shin doesn't know about Shoshidai or Busomas, or that his father, the owner of the Matoba group, is a top contributor to Shoshidai. As he gets enlightened, Matoba reveals his contribution to the movement against Busomas mainly because of the incident they had years back, which resulted in the loss of Shin's mom. Shin is curious and worries about what will happen to him as he can feel the sword Shiryu inside him. He fears he might become a monster and pleads for help. After examining Shin's body and seeing that he's very much affected, Matoba asks that they use the Prismaphon on Shin, a treatment that is still in its experimental stage. It's the risk Matoba is willing to take, at least if there's any chance of saving his son. Shin's treatment procedure is mild, unlike Ri's, which is excruciating and scary. Kuromaru is settled in, and Guy checks up on him. Kazumo isn't in support of showing Kuromaru hospitality, and he feels that since Kuromaru is a Busomas, he should be unalived. Himiko explains that the duty of the Gabi is to save souls, and since Kuromaru, as a Busoma, heard and followed her voice, it only means he was in need of help. Regardless of whose soul it is, the Gabi must perform its duty. Honestly, at this point, Kazumo should just chill out. Himiko asks that Guy be made to look after Kuromaru as he seems fond of him. As they walk, she mentions that she'll be going into fasting and meditation at the holy place. She states that it is time for the great change, given that the number of Busomas has increased lately, mentioning that there should be a reason or meaning within the 300 years of the Gabi for why she's present at a time like this. Himiko asks Kazumo not to worry about her. She has to follow her destiny. Kuromaru is just hanging about when he notices a bird away from its nest. Concerned, he helps it back up the tree to its nest and the other birds. Unfortunately, his good deed isn't perceived that way by the disciples, who rudely confront him for messing around the sacred tree on which the bird's nest was. Kuromaru is reliving his trauma of being bullied and is about to get hit when he calls the disciples out for it. In the heat of the moment, his Busoma persona almost awakens, briefly teasing. Guy feels this and quickly intervenes. The disciples reluctantly leave, and Kuromaru thanks Guy. To him, Guy is his friend. Himiko is in the know of the incident. She commends Guy for his actions and asks him to keep looking after Kuromaru, adding that it's part of his training or restore. Guy reports that he saw Kuromaru suppress the Busoma, overcoming the killer instinct with his willpower. Guy worries if he'll ever be able to do that, as even without the Shiryu, the killer instincts still remain. Himiko asks him to ease up as he has just begun training, but Guy is serious about this. He asks Himiko to end him if he ever lets loose, just as Seiya requested of him. He'd love to rest within Himiko like other weapons. Himiko still believes there is hope for Guy. Sayaka is in grief about Guy. Hold on to the weapon he gave her. Memories come to her mind. Eamon says to her that he is at fault. Although Sayaka doesn't agree, he explains that he only wanted to give Guy a life, as a weapon can both take and give life. Shin's treatment is done, and surprisingly, his body is back to its original form with no trace of having the weapon whatsoever. Kyoka is in disbelief and excited as well. She feels she can treat her father, a Bosoma, since it was possible to treat Shin, a Chrysalis. At the end of the examinations, Shin abruptly wakes up after experiencing flashes of the Shiryu in his mind. He panics as he checks his body, but everything appears normal. Heading out, Shin hears a loud, piercing ring, and he knows it's Shiryu. He follows the sound to where it is being kept. As Shin arrives, calling from amongst other weapons was Guy's prosthetic arm. Kyoka receives reports not too long after that Shin has escaped with the Sage Alma. After observing the scene, she wonders if there's any connection between Shin's Shiryu and Gei's, the inferior version. Kyoka orders the search for Gei and the weapon, but her command gets overridden by Motoba. He mentions that the order to stand down is from Apostolos 3, adding that Kyoka won't be held responsible. Kyoka is confused. Shin subconsciously arrives at the Gabi with Guy's prosthetic arm, and Guy senses it. Shin regains consciousness, wondering where he is and how he got there. He sits with Guy away from the temple, explaining he heard a voice and suddenly he was at the Gabi. He also explains that he and Guy are the same, as they both have connections to Shiryu. Guy doesn't want anything to do with this and throws the arm away. On their back, Shin thanks Guy for saving him back then at the park, also inquiring if he's Sayaka's brother. Just after Guy corrects that they only grew up together, they hear a bang from the temple. They rush to the scene only to see the disciples all taken down. Standing above them is El Gashosu, who starts attacking Guy and the others right away. Guy orders Shin and Kuromaru to retreat as they try to evade El Gashosu's bullets. Guy gets caught in one of the attacks and loses his arm. This is an opportunity and El Gashosu seizes it, transforming into a Bosoma and unleashing a disastrous attack. Just then, Kuromaru jumps in front of it to protect Guy, who is vulnerable at the moment. Kuromaru doesn't quite survive this face-off and is taken down. More disciples arrive with Kazumo, and they, together, do whatever it is they think they're doing. It's like a bad imitation of Doctor Strange's move, and of course, El Gashosu easily counters it. Guy is really upset about the turn of events. He gets emotional, and as he rages out, his prosthetic arm flies to him like Thor's hammer. Himiko senses this, but can't do anything to stop Guy. Like a Super Saiyan, Guy transforms into a Busoma, now able to go toe-to-toe with El Gashosu. He dominates the fight and fends off El Gashosu. Despite saving everyone in the temple, Kazumo still acts arrogant, stating that he regrets rescuing Guy since he is Busoma. Before Himiko gets to the scene, everyone is down, and Guy is nowhere to be found. Himiko, Kazumo, and the surviving disciples lay their fallen members to rest. Kazumo is all about how Guy has betrayed them, which isn't a shock since he wasn't even on good terms with Guy. I mean, he has always hated the guy, see what I did there? But Himiko only fears for Guy. Seeing as his connection to Shiryu seems inevitable, she'll have to kill him herself. Kuromaru is on his solo search for Guy as he worries for his friend. He finally sees Guy, but Guy's aura isn't very friendly or welcoming. Kuromaru stops in his tracks as something is obviously going on with Guy. He's like Batman on a bad day. Just then a vehicle approaches, but just before driving by, the driver gets possessed by Shiryu. He makes a stop and picks up Guy. Kuromaru is confused, but keeps desperately running after the vehicle. At the Shoshidai, the scientists work on the Prisma Fond, Kyoka's only hope of saving her father. Motoba sees this as a game changer in their movement against Busomas. Shin wakes up violently from flashbacks of Shiryu, almost like a quick trailer of his whole Shiryu incident replaying in his head. Still in shock, he tries to reassure himself that he's fine and back to normal. His butler comes in concerned about him, but Shin confirms that he's fine and goes ahead to prepare for school. Shin and Sayaka sit out in school, having what is considered barely a conversation as Sayaka's mind seems elsewhere. Shin does most of the talking amidst her cold replies, until he mentions seeing Guy. After a moment of disbelief, Sayaka switches up and is very serious about getting information about Guy's whereabouts, stating it is important to her. Shin gets paranoid under the influence of Shiryu. He throws a lot of questions, asking if he isn't important to Sayaka, if Guy is Sayaka's boyfriend, if she loves Guy, and he even asks if he, Shin, and she are dating since they kissed. All the while, Sayaka is finding it hard to string up answers until Shin lashes out, banging the desk. Just then, he comes back to his senses, but Sayaka excuses herself and takes her leave. Just then, some bullies come along with their regular trouble, but they sure picked the wrong day. Shin bodies all three of them with ease. He doesn't even realize when this happens and freaks out after coming back to his senses. At Shoshidai, some chrysalids, including Issei, are released to go after a rogue Bosuma, Kyoka's father. Chiyoka requests from the Apostolos 3 to use the Prismaphon, but her request gets denied. They explain that their intention isn't to save the Bosoma, but to end it for good, as they feel it has been an embarrassment to Shoshidai. Kyoka finds this unsettling as she leaves. She just can't get over the urge to do the right right thing, making a turn and heading back to go take some Prismaphon anyway. Just before entering, she gets discovered by one of the scientists who doesn't quite believe her when she says she has permission to be there. He's about to check to confirm when Kyoka pulls a gun on him. She drives away with a briefcase of it. The Bosoma bodies the chrysalis sent after it, with Issei being the last one standing and doesn't even see the fight as a challenge. Just then, Kyoka arrives feeling like John Wick, but takes a shot and misses. Yikes! It heads on to attack Kyoka, but Issei intervenes. Arnie spectates the scene, enjoying the face-off. Issei doesn't last long and gets overpowered with a single attack. As the Bosoma focuses on his wrecked opponent, Kyoka makes a shot that finally hits. The Bosoma doesn't see this as anything and is about to mock Kyoka when Prismaphon kicks in. She takes a couple of more shots just to be more fetal, emptying her magazine. Gay arrives in town with his possessed driver, who starts unaliving people at random. The influence of Shiru, the killer instinct, spreads to more people in the perimeter. This is complete havoc, like a zombie apocalypse, but weirder. Takuma, Kyoka's father, has always been head over heels for his wife. She meant everything to him, but her death made him realize how powerless he was. As he couldn't help the one he loved, his thirst for power began, which led him to the weapon, the Sultgoin. These flash through Takuma's mind just before he reverts from being a Busoma to his normal self. He's confused at first, but is at ease when he recognizes Kyoka. He has been gone for 16 years, and they're both happy to see each other again, but their reunion quickly comes to an end when Shoshidai troops move in. Kyoka steps in front of Takuma, blocking him from the gunpoint. She explains that she has used the Prismaphon on him and that he's now human, and Takuma surrenders to be taken back to Shoshidai for confirmation. In the vehicle, Kyoka assures Takuma that he'll be fine, as there won't be any problems after he gets checked up. But Takuma is prepared for anything, given the many bad things he has done. Still, Kyoka doesn't want that, as they've only just met after many years. She can't lose him again. Just then, the soldiers receive instructions from the higher-ups and stop the vehicle, ordering Takuma out. Kokuma out, Kyoka finds it weird that they've already arrived at their destination, but the look on the soldier's face tells her enough. Takuma and Kyoka step out, and the soldiers hold out their guns. They have orders to eliminate Takuma and Kyoka too, as no single traitor can be allowed to live. Kyoka and Takuma quickly devise a countermeasure. Takuma creates a distraction, and Kyoka engages. With their teamwork, they take down the soldiers. Just then, Kyoka notices her father struggling in pain. She goes to his aid, but he asks her to go away from him. Kyoka doesn't heed this, and, unfortunately, gets stabbed by Takuma under the influence of Sultgoin. Just before leaving, the Sultgoin states that Takuma's body is his. Just before taking her last breath, Kyoka drifts in memories of her father as she watches him go. The city is in chaos due to the influence of the Shiryu. Grims is enjoying the moment, reveling in the doom of humanity. Kuromaru finally catches up to Guy and pleads with him not to leave him alone, but Guy responds by saying that the original owner of the body no longer exists. Mentioning that he is tired of playing with humans, he transforms into his Busoma form and attacks Kuromaru, who also transforms to defend himself. However, this doesn't do much as he is easily taken down. As Guy walks away, Kuromaru calls out desperately for his first and only friend, but that just isn't Guy anymore. Rai is upset about Shin's absence as he hasn't come around in a while. Despite the efforts from the others, she seems inconsolable. In school, Shin perfectly answers a question, gaining the admiration of his classmates. A classmate teases Shin, but another classmate quickly warns him that Shin is scary when angry. Meanwhile, Kuromaru walks through the wreckage, still grieving for his friend Guy. Shoko mentions that Ria is lucky to have a family member who cares, adding that she envies her. In his way, she tries to cheer her up by pretending to be her brother. Ria goes along with this and asks why he didn't visit. Shoko explains that she overate and got sick, but Ria points out that Shin wouldn't do that. Sayori is out with Kagatsuka. She just wants to be at the park where it's quiet. Kagatsuka praises Sayori for being a good girl and inquires if she is looking forward to leaving the hospital soon. Sayori replies that she doesn't mind staying because she has Wii and Shoko with her. However, she expresses her dislike for the pain, mentioning that it hurts no matter where she is. Almost as if putting words in her mouth, Kagatsuka says that Sayori's heart seeks freedom just before taking off her bracelet. Later on, Sayori and Kagatsuka return to the hospital. Rie and Shoko are happy that Sayori is back, but she seems worn out as she slumps. Sayori assures them that she's fine, although she looks hurt. As if covering up, Kagatsuka mentions that Sayori must be tired, as she was excited about going out after a long while and played around to exhaustion. He goes ahead to tell Shoko that her mom is there to visit her. Shoko is in disbelief and disgusted by the thought of that happening. Kagatsuka tries to convince her to go see her mom, but Shoko is stubborn about it. After Kagatsuka takes his leave, Shoko explains to Rie and Sayori that her mother isn't her real mother, mother, but her stepmother, who, according to her, unalived her real mother. They can all relate to having issues with their parent. Kagutsuko watches them, reporting to the higher-ups that the research is going smoothly. He reveals that they're extracting life energy from different weapons and injecting it into the children to make them greater than regular humans. The bracelets they wear help them to maintain their sanity, but when removed, they become beasts acting on their killer instincts. Kagutsuka gets commended and assured the full support of Shoshidai till his work is complete. Kagutsuka explains to his colleague that he had lied to Shoko to taint her heart with hatred. He plans to keep that rage and hatred in them so they don't forget about it with time, which is a requirement to become a Busoma. As Kagutsuka leads, his colleague continues to make more observations, but as though feeling a presence, she turns to see Midoriko. Midoriko takes her clothes, impersonating Kagutsuka's colleague after unaliving her. She goes ahead to the children's room and asks Rai out for her exam. Himiko and Kazumo arrive at the city, which Guy caused havoc in. Knowing this is his doing, or Shiryu's more appropriately, they make haste to catch up with him. After school, Shin rushes up to Sayaka, who is on her way home. He apologizes for his actions and everything he said, adding that he'll work hard for her to love him back. Just then, Kuromaru arrives to meet Shin. Since Shin is a friend of Guy's, Kuromaru pleads with him to help get Guy back to the way he was. On hearing Guy, Sayaka hurriedly asks about Guy's whereabouts, but this freaks Kuromaru out even more. Just as Shin tries to get Kuromaru's point clearly, he gets a call. It's his father, who relays the news that Raya has been kidnapped by a Busoma. As if being motivated by this tragedy, Shin asks Kuromaru to take him to where Guy is. On arriving at the city, Shin and Sayaka can't believe the level of destruction. Kuromaru points them in the direction of Guy. They make their way to him, and Guy reacts as if he has been anticipating meeting Shin. Sayaka hurries to Guy, hugging him as she cries and mops about him, not returning to them right away even though he is alive. Guy gets her off. He doesn't seem the least bit friendly. Shin gets straight to the point, stating that he needs Guy's help and explaining his situation. With a grin, Guy agrees to help. Rai wakes up confused about where she is. She questions Midoriko, who is just watching, about why she was taken and what Midoriko plans to do with her. She is quite noisy and even threatens Midoriko, stating that her brother will come to her aid. Midoriko gets agitated and attacks Riai, stabbing her. She mentions that Riai is just a bait for her brother and considers killing Riai. But just then, Riai's bracelet falls off. To Midoriko's shock, Riai transforms into a fierce-looking monster. Shin and the others are on their way, following a GPS tracker on Ri's bracelet. Shin halts and turns to Sayaka. He asks her to wait there and not come along as it might be dangerous. But Sayaka insists as she is worried, coupled with the fact that Guy is acting weird. Shin has no choice but to leave her behind. Just then he realizes that the GPS signal has gone off, but it's no issue as Guy leads them there without it. Midoriko and Ri have a heated battle, and Midoriko is enjoying every bit of it. The fight isn't decided yet when Shin barges in. He doesn't recognize Rie and asks Midoriko where Rie is. Ri retreats and escapes the building, which is quite upsetting to Midoriko. Recognizing Midoriko as one of the Busomas, Shin repeats his question more sternly. Just then, Guy walks in, giving off Sukana vibes. Although he's disappointed at the level of threat he has to face, it's better than facing off against humans according to him. He transforms into him Busoma form, ready to throw down. When Sayaka interrupts, she pleads with him to change back and tries the dramatic "this isn't who you are" thing. But it's a failed attempt as Gay stabs through her. He mentions that her voice won't get to the original Guy. Shin rushes to Sayaka with the quick tragic turn of events. Feeling the rush of sorrow and anger, Shin's killer instincts awaken. Gay's fight with Midoriko is on, with Midoriko keeping up with Guy and enjoying the moment. Unexpectedly, the fight gets interrupted when Shin attacks Midoriko from behind, ending her. Why? Shin mentions that he'll never forgive Guy and that he'll fight to defeat all the Busomas. Guy doesn't engage but retreats, telling Shin that he'll awaken too eventually. Shin regains consciousness immediately after. Sayaka is hospitalized and seems stable, although unconscious, while Shin stays by her with a gaze filled with different emotions. Shin's blood is being transfused into Sayaka, and he low-key enjoys it, feeling connected to her. A little later, he waits outside Sayaka's room when Eamon and his servant, Ukawa, arrive, having been called by him. He informs them that the operation is finished and that Sayaka is no longer at risk, but they can't let their guard down just yet. Shin reveals that it was Guy who did it. They are surprised, believing Guy to be gone, but Shin insists that Guy is alive, though not the same person he used to be. Shin vows to make Guy pay for what he did to Sayaka. Eamon realizes that Guy has finally succumbed to the evil of the Shiryu and blames himself for giving it to Guy. At the hospital, Wie is having fun with Shuko and Sayori like nothing happened. The girls are surprised by her good mood, given their concerns over her disappearance. Suddenly, Sayori notices that Rie has a wound, and just as if her body only now realizes it too, the wound heals immediately. Everyone is in awe, and Rie is thrilled by her newfound powers. Meanwhile, Kagatsuka informs the higher-ups interrupts that Rie has returned. At a salon, Issei is back at work as a hairdresser, scolding a customer for not taking good care of her hair. He feels glad to be back, but that feeling dips when he sees next customer Yasuko. She bought all the salons in the city in anticipation of his return. Disgusted, Issei flees while Yasuko chases after him, even going as extreme as attacking and then saving him. Despite her efforts, Issei still refuses her kiss, freezes her, and then escapes. Back at the hospital, Rie is suddenly in pain while Shuko and Sayori are confused and worried. As Rai remembers what she did, her bracelet suddenly breaks. She warns the girls to run, but before they can react, she transforms into a monster and bites Yuko in the neck. Next, she approaches Sayori, who is terrified and almost transforms too, but it's too late. Kagatsuka sees this happening through the CCTV and panics. At that moment, Shin arrives at the hospital, eager to see his sister. Meanwhile, Rie finds Kagatsuka and ends him without a word. Regaining a bit of her consciousness, she realizes what she has done and feels sad. Shin finds only Shuko and Sayori's bodies in the room. He panics as he searches for Rie. He meets Kagatsuka already gone and follows the blood trails down the hallway. Issei finally finds some rest at a bar, but suddenly, a drink slides over to him. It's from Arnie's. He tastes it, and from the content it signifies a long goodbye, raising concerns for his life. Arnie's mentioned she saw his battle with Zei Solskjaer earlier and believes he's strong enough to confront her. Issei doubts he can defeat her now. Just then, another drink slides to him. This one means, "I'll give you everything tonight." It's from Yasuko. Issei jumps out of the bar, running for his life. Once outside, Arnie's catches up with Issei and asks why he ran. She reminds him that she killed his sister, which infuriates Issei and causes him to charge at her. However, he hesitates, mesmerized by her beauty. Yasuko wobbles over, refusing to give up on her love, and tries to seduce him. Issei hides behind Arnis, and in the spur of the moment, he declares Arnis his girlfriend just to keep Yasuko away. Yasuko takes this as a challenge and decides to fight Arnis. With a mere blow of a kiss, Arnis knocks her out and then turns to Issei, asking if he truly loves her. Issei begins to deny it, but Arnis kisses him, causing him to succumb. Rai meets some drunk men on the street and sends them to their maker. Guy finally finds her and asks what she is, but she just wants to fight instead and gets thrown away. She returns to human form. Just then, Shin arrives and mistakenly believes Guy caused the chaos at the hospital and kidnapped Rai. He draws his sword and Guy does the same. Meanwhile, Issei wakes up to see Arnis, realizing what he has done. He hurriedly begins dressing, disappointed in himself. Arnis teases him about finally living his dream of loving her. Issei grows angry and pulls out his sword, attacking Arnis as a fight starts. Back with Guy and Shin, they engage in a power struggle. Guy says that the other Shiryu is within Shin, meaning they are the same. Shin refuses to accept this and manages to push Guy back, but Guy retaliates by throwing Shin to the ground. Shin realizes he can't defeat Guy now. At that instant, Rie regains consciousness. She sees Shin but starts transforming again, so she flees. Shin chases after her as she screams for him to leave her alone. She also says she hates him and refuses to explain anything. Shin still runs after her. Back to Issei, he successfully freezes Arnis, but when he prepares to strike, he becomes distracted again by her beauty. Arnis breaks through the ice in her true form, terrifying Issei. He had forgotten what she truly looked like as a goddess. As he struggles with his disbelief at having slept with a monster, the ever-resilient Yasuko arrives yet again. This time, Issei chooses her, at least she's human. Both charge at Arnis, but she strikes first. As Issei and Yasuko try to regain their strength, Arnis encourages Issei to let his hatred consume him and transform into a Busoma. Issei remembers his sister and begins to transform. Yasuko tries to stop him, but he isn't listening. Resorting to extreme measures, she eventually succeeds in saving his life. Now that she has done so, it's time to show Arnis the power of love. Arnis is impressed by her. Issei and Yasuko collapse on the ground, trying to catch their breath. Issei thanks Yasuko for saving him. She responds that she would gladly lay down her life for the man she loves. Issei finally gives up on running away. He now understands that he needs her after all and starts to see that her hair is truly beautiful. Meanwhile, Shin refuses to give up on Rai. However, she is well hidden in a tree, having already fully transformed. While having tea at home, Shin remembers his sister's words and wonders why she would say that. He suspects it might be about Guy, but is unsure what Guy wants with her. Then he remembers that Guy is now a Busoma and concludes that if Guy could do that to Sayaka, it wouldn't be strange for him to do anything else. Just then, his butler brings his food and attempts to coax him to eat, but Shin snaps at him. Realizing his mistake, he quickly apologizes. Meanwhile, Rie watches from a tree outside like a monkey. Eamon stays by his daughter's side, relieved that she's okay. He reflects on Guy's situation, believing it to be fate. He recalls giving Guy the Shiryu as an arm after it possessed Sayaka, causing him to lose his original arm. Amon decides that the fate binding Guy and the Shiryu must be severed. Hearing this, Sayaka, who isn't asleep, realizes realizes what she had done. When Shin arrives, she asks to see Guy. He tries to calm her down, but Sayaka insists on apologizing to Guy. Upset, Shin points out that Guy is the one who hurt her and that he is no longer human. Despite this, Sayaka remains resolute, disappointing Shin. He says that his blood flows in her, but Sayaka responds that it doesn't matter. She immediately realizes her mistake and thanks him for saving her life. Shin leaves, promising to inform her if he finds Guy, but her words had hit a nerve. Sayaka pulls out a small dagger from her bed. Guy had given it to her for protection, and she blames herself for what happened to him. Meanwhile, Eamon has a gem called Tamahagane, gifted to him from a shrine. This ancient metal is believed to harbor the gods of the moon. He says it will become a divine blade capable of shattering the demon swords. As Okawa guessed, it will be used against the Shiryu. Amon diligently begins crafting a sword from the Tamahagan. Shin visits his father and accepts his fate as a chrysalis, vowing to fight against violence and evil. Kazuma is proud of his decision and mentions that he is also searching for Rai, showing Shin footage of the monster in the hospital. Shin recalls seeing it before and realizes it wasn't Guy who took Rai. Suddenly, a soldier informs Kazuma about a Busoma. It's just Kuromaru throwing a tantrum about Guy. Shin intervenes to stop him. Kuromaru recognizes Shin and reverts to human form, explaining that Guy was his friend but has changed because everyone was mean to him. Shin understands that Kuromaru simply needs a friend and offers to be one. He suggests they work together to save Guy. Kuromaru readily agrees, though he hesitates to fight Guy. Shin emotionally blackmails him to comply. Kazuma meets with Apostolo 3, who confronts him about trying to fool them with the Prismaphon research data. They reveal that it only results in temporary reductions, followed by extreme increases in the values. It's basically a catalyst to transform humans into Basoma. Kazuma boldly declares himself a believer in Basoma as humanity's future, arguing that it's a logical evolution of humans merging with weapons. The Apostolo 3 are furious and demand him to step down, but the only stepping Kazuma did was stepping ahead of them. Both members are swiftly eliminated, sent to the afterlife by Chrysalis dispatched by Kazuma. Later that night, Sayaka continues to think about Guy, reminiscing about how peaceful things used to be in their childhood. She could always find Guy, no matter where he was, but now she couldn't. Suddenly, the sword glows, and she sees a vision of young Guy running away. Filled with hope, Sayaka leaves the hospital to search for him. Guy is currently with El Gashosu, who is eager to finish their fight. Kazuma attempts to persuade Himiko to return to the temple, but she refuses, insisting they must end the conflict. She also has to keep her promise to Guy. Kazuma has a bad feeling. As El Gashosu and Guy begin the fight, they both transform into their Busuma forms. Meanwhile, Shin gets notified of Busumas. El Gashosu shoots at Guy, but Guy is unfazed and slams his opponent into the wall just as Himiko and Kazuma arrive. The Shiryu declares that he is no longer Guy, but Himiko argues that Guy's soul is still within him and she intends to take it. El Gashosu shoots at them, angering Himiko, who removes him from the equation. She absorbs his guns into her body and turns back towards Guy. But she's affected by El Gashosu's Alma. It was stronger than she anticipated. Guy returns to his human form, visibly disappointed, but he doesn't hesitate to counter Shin's attack. Shin is prepared to fight. Kuromaru transforms into a Basoma, though hesitating as he refuses to fight Guy, claiming he is his only friend. Shin feels betrayed and decides to confront Guy alone, but Sayaka jumps in front of Guy, protecting him. She apologizes to Guy and hugs him, further infuriating Shin. Guy shoves Sayaka aside and attempts to strike Shin. Just in time, Rie arrives and stops him, but she is stabbed from behind by the very brother she adored. Shin asks what she did to Rie, but she transforms back into her human form and falls to the ground. Shin, shocked and bewildered, realizes what he has done. His anger triggers his transformation into a Busoma. He's the white version of Guy's Basoma. Grims watches from the shadows, as usual, alongside Arnie's and Zed Soltgoin. Guy transforms as the fight begins. Kuromaru takes Rie away from the battleground. Sayaka screams at Guy to stop, but of course, he doesn't listen. In desperation, she stabs his side with a blade. He shoves her to the ground as if her little knife had no effect, but it did. He transforms back into human form and collapses. Shin tries to take advantage of this moment, but Z Sokyuin intervenes, allowing Guy to escape. Sayaka wakes up to find Himiko healing her. The first thing she asks is about Guy. Himiko replies that she doesn't know, as she wasn't in a state to follow him. Grims interrupts the fight between Zogiwin and Shen, stating that it's not yet time. He explains that the two Shiryu must be of equal power for the Busoshin to be complete. Zig Giwin transforms back into his human form and agrees to wait. Himiko scolds Sayaka for doing something so reckless despite still not being fully recovered. Sayaka admits she wasn't thinking and thanks Himiko for saving her. Meanwhile, Amon visits Kigetsu at the temple and shows him the sword he made from the legendary Tamahagan. Kigetsu admires the sword. Amon has a request. He asks to borrow the divine sword to slay the Shiru. Just then, the blade glows, prompting both men to run into the temple. Zoltgewin is already there. He reveals the huge mirror and questions whether it is a god. When asked if the Busamas have a god, Zoltgewin states that the Busoshin will lead humanity to destruction and that they will have their own god. Kagetsu mockingly retorts that monsters, like humans, worship unseen gods. Zekokuin argues that he was born of his own will and is superior to lesser beings. However, Kagetsu reminds him that he inhabits a human body and that his sword was crafted by human hands. Infuriated, Zoltgewin transforms into a Busama to attack, but Amon cuts off his arm with the divine sword. Shocked, Zoltgewin questions what sword this is. Kagetsu enlightens him that it is a completely pure weapon comprised solely of human emotions. Zoltgewin tries to use his own true power of destruction to attack again, but the divine sword defeats him. It gets pulled into his body, engulfing him in light, and he disappears. Amon feels dejected for losing the sword, but Kagetsu reassures him that someday the sword will become a chain binding humanity and the Busoma sea. Meanwhile, Sayaka is busy eating. She was quite hungry. Himiko is also impressed by the cheesecake that Kazuma brought. Now that Sayaka's wounds have healed, they discuss. Himiko asks how Sayaka knows Guy, and Sayaka explains that they are basically family. Sayaka then asks Himiko the same question, to which Himiko replies that they were fated to meet. She introduces herself, mentioning that 24 weapons rest within her body. Sayaka is confused, but does not press for more information. Instead, Himiko asks to hear more about Sayaka. As Shoshidai, Kazuma is notified that Shin has arrived and is destroying troops. Kazuma feels proud to see what Shin has become and happily activates all Chrysali to fight Shin. From the day of the incident, Kazuma feared and hated the Busoma. To learn more about them, he made contact with the Shoshidai. Eventually, however, he couldn't deny his feelings and came to worship the Busoma. He had wanted his children to become Busomas, with a hatred developed after losing their mother. He failed to artificially turn Ri into a Busoma, but she proved useful in helping Shin let go of his weak human heart and transform. Shin effortlessly annihilates all the Chrysali and heads straight for his father. Kazuma attempts to hug him like a proud father, but Shin transforms and gives him a taste of the sword, and down goes the dad of the year. Back at the conversation, Himiko is learning about normal girl life from Sayaka. She doesn't even know what karaoke is, having grown up in a temple where there wasn't even a TV. Sayaka kindly explains it to her. Himiko asks if Guy sings, to which Shiaka replies that he does not, but she managed to get him to join her for karaoke once. He just listened to her sing and eventually fell asleep. Himiko finds this funny and comments that it's typical of Guy. Sayaka finds her reaction a bit odd. Meanwhile, Kuromaru is with Rie, who still hasn't woken up. He's panicking, unsure if she is alive or dead. Then he suddenly sees Guy. He asks Guy if he's back to his old self. Guy responds that he doesn't know. Kuromaru, not forgetting his obsession, asks if they are still friends. Guy tells him they are not and urges him to find other friends. He apologizes for everything and then leaves. Just then, Rie wakes up and asks who Kuromaru is. He returns the question. Himiko and Sayaka continue their discussion. Sayaka mentions that Guy can be nice sometimes and shows Himiko the dagger he crafted for her. As she talks about him, Himiko realizes that Sayaka is in love with Guy. When she asks, Sayaka admits that she is. Soon after, Sayaka falls asleep. Grims goes to Zoltgewin, who had called for him. Zoltgewin questions Grims about his plans. Grims tells him that when the Busoshin is born, there'll be no need for human vessels. It'll be a world with just Busamas where they'll devour each other and only the strongest will remain. Zoltgewin says that they were formed by human emotions and there are some things weapons alone can't be. He testifies to experiencing the strength of human emotions. Grimm says that's nonsense. He ends Zoltgewin there to feed his strength, taking the emotions gem too. Himiko is outside when Guy arrives. Shin sits admiring his handiwork. However, his feelings and memories still remain. The Shiryu within him wonders why he suffers. Himiko is surprised to see Guy return to his original self. Guy gets straight to the point and asks her to destroy him. Himiko refuses, but he insists. He explains that the pain from the stab wound brought him back, but he knows he will become a Busoma once the wound heals. Guy reminds Himiko of her promise, expressing his fear that he might actually harm Sayaka this time and may not be able to come back. Himiko agrees to keep her promise, but not yet. Meanwhile, Sayaka wakes up, somehow sensing Guy's presence. As she runs towards them, Himiko feels jealous and walks away. Sayaka hugs Guy, relieved that he is back, and he returns the hug. They sit down to talk. Sayaka asks about Shin, and Guy tells her that he is gone. He is no longer the Shin she knew. Sayaka believes that if Guy could become human again, then Shin can as well. Guy interrupts her, saying it's impossible to turn back and that he was only able to return because of her. He's grateful that she has always been there for him and helped him survive. arrive, Sayaka tells him that he is strong and kind and pleads with him not to leave her again. She imagines a peaceful life together as a family. Guy wipes her tears away and says he hopes she will always remember him. Suddenly, Guy senses that Shin is nearby. Shin wants to take Sayaka, and Guy tries to defend her but gets a sword in the gut. Shin compels Sayaka to sleep and takes her away as Guy reaches out helplessly. Waking up, Guy immediately asks about Sayaka. Himiko tells him what happened, and he attempts to chase after them, only to find himself too weak. Himiko tries to stop him, but Guy refuses to listen. Left with no choice, she heals him, allowing him to run off to save another girl. Her heart breaks as she watches him go. As a tear falls, she begins to lose her strength, and a sword protrudes from her body. Kazumo tries to help, but she stops him and runs away. Realizing her true feelings, she acknowledges that she is in love. More swords emerge, and Kazumo hugs her tightly, refusing to let go. Multiple weapons come out from her, resulting in both of their demise. Shin watches Sayaka sleep. When she wakes up and realizes that it is Shiryu in control, she yells for it to leave Shin's body. He pulls out a sword to threaten her but starts to shake. Guy arrives just then, and Shin puts Sayaka to sleep before meeting Guy. Grims observes, anticipating the birth of Busoshin when both light and shadow become one. Guy and Shin begin to fight, almost at equal strengths. Meanwhile, Kuromaru and Ri seem to be getting along. They notice the sun disappearing, and Ri is scared for her brother. She runs off to protect him, with Kuromaru following behind. Grims is annoyed by Guy and Shin fighting in human form. They must transform into Busoma for the Busoshin to be born. Sayaka runs over, screaming at both of them to stop fighting. Shin recalls his life and is filled with self-pity, believing everyone leaves him. Watching Guy and Sayaka rush towards each other pisses him off even more, leading him to attack mindlessly. Grims intervenes, seizing Sayaka. He's frustrated that both Guy and Shin are clinging to their human hearts because of her. He strikes her with his scythe, enraging both Guy and Shin, who then attack Grims. Grims prophesizes that if they can defeat him, the Busoshin will be born. Arnie's watches from a distance. Shin gets tossed against a wall like a rag doll, and Guy is nearly buried in the ground. Grimm says he's the symbol of madness and murder, and only after they abandon their hearts will they be able to defeat him. Ri and Kuromaru arrive, joining the fight, but they quickly get their asses handed to them. Grims is ready to eliminate all three humans to awaken the boys, but they fiercely attack him with full rage. Grims is defeated, yet he believes that he has won, convinced that the Busoshin will now be born. Guy and Shin lose control, transforming into Busoma. They attack each other, and a globe of light forms around them, visible to everyone, including Issei and Yasuko. As Guy and Shin fight within the globe, Kuromaru positions himself to shield Ri and Sayaka from the light. Arnie's remarks that no matter which of them wins, the two Shiryu will become one and the Busoshin will be born, leading humanity to destruction. However, she wonders what will happen if there is any humanity or will power left in the victor. The fighting continues until Shin finally lands a strike. As Guy falls, he remembers everyone he cares about and slips into his subconscious. In this realm, Shin stands behind him and says that only Guy can prevent the birth of the Busoshin. He asks Guy to take care of Sayaka as his final wish. Back in reality, Guy charges at Shin and delivers the strike, shedding a single tear as Shin moves on to the afterlife. Both Rai and Sayaka are sad. Things are at peace again. Kuromaru finally asks Rie to be his friend, and she accepts. Sayaka gets her wish as Guy returns to live with them, diligently forging swords. Everyone is happy.